Championship Wrestling, bringing you great wrestling action, sanctioned by the NWA, National Wrestling Alliance.
NWA Championship Wrestling, starting with November 15th, 1986. Show opening clip for this was just the Midnight Express and Big Bubba jumping Ronnie Garvin. And then Jim Cornette comes out to join the announcers for a promo. And this, in hindsight, was even more awesome than it was at the time. For weeks, he's been protesting against this match. It's inhuman. You can't make us do this. I'm not getting up there. My men are getting up there. But as the weeks have gone by, he has changed his tune. And now he's happy and excited. Because his boys have been training. He's got a workout video he's going to show later to show how they're working out in the scaffold. He knows his men are going to be triumphant. They're going to throw the Road Warriors down and never going to have to deal with the Road Warriors ever again.
I like the idea that Jim Cornette bought his own scaffold so that they could practice.
Yeah. This is all explained. This is all explained. We had the Midnight Express and Big Bubba beating, or, well, they beat him. Spoiler. Beat Lee Peak, Alan West, and Vernon Deaton in a six-man. I believe somewhere in here, Cornette claimed Bubba was 7'3". Although by the next show, he had shrunk to 6'8", so maybe I'm wrong. Bubba had a shoot Samoan drop on one of these geeks. A 350-pound man just crushing somebody.
It is astonishing how horrible he is at this point. And very shortly thereafter, he's very, very good.
It was like... Was he working with 89? He was working with Hogan?
88, 89.
It's like 2 or 3 years later.
Yes.
He went from a bottom-of-the-card WCW guy to a very good WWF main event guy.
That's right.
Fast.
These splashes. We'll get into them later. He does this splash off the middle rope that is just like... We'll get to it.
I have often claimed that the most improved wrestler I've ever seen was Nigel McGuinness. From these dirt, horrible Heartland wrestling days to what he became in Ring of Honor. Big Bubba's on that list as well. Let's see. We had Rick Rude doing a promo vowing to be the first man to beat Wahoo McDaniel in an Indian strap match. He also promised that Paul Jones would beat Jimmy Valiant in the hair match. And then it was time for the Starrcade Control Center.
This is the best.
I was burying this concept the first time they did it. I apologize.
Yeah, what are you talking about?
I have no idea. We need more. We need a Survivor Series Control Center. Bring back Sean Mooney to do it. I don't care.
Actually, if they're going to do it, they'd have to bring back Sean Mooney. Because none of the current geeks could possibly... Like, Tony Schiavone is so good at running the Starrcade Control Center. He is a fucking professional.
He doesn't make jokes about anything.
No. You know what he is? Because he was a baseball announcer. He's a baseball announcer now. Mm-hmm. He was a sports guy who got a job doing fake pro wrestling. But in the control center here, he just ran it like he was doing the baseball control center.
Absolutely.
Stats, this guy's finish.
Here's how he got to this point.
That's right. He had enthusiasm. He was great.
So for this first one here was where we saw the Midnight Express's workout video. We're in an empty arena. There's a wrestling ring. There's a scaffold above the ring. And there's, let's see, I think 6 people in this entire building. Bobby and Dennis, Cornette and Bubba's 4, had a cameraman on the floor, and I think a cameraman in the stands. And I think that was it. So first Cornette's talking to them, and he wants them, he's giving them a kind of a pep talk, but basically his message is, everyone's going to be watching this. I can't have you guys making me look dumb. Just follow my lead. Then he turns to the cameraman and says, "Are you ready? Okay, we're starting now."
Classic.
So easy and so basic. So Cornette gets a promo. He explains Mama Cornette has funded this entire enterprise. Mama Cornette rented an arena, had a ring and a scaffold brought in and set up for the purpose of her boy and his men training and learning how to work on a scaffold.
I do love the idea that in 1986 there were places where you could go to rent a wrestling ring.
Yeah.
As well as a scaffold.
Yes.
Acme Rings and Scaffold Company. Rentals.
So he says, it's time to show you what we can do. Dennis, Bobby, go ahead and climb that scaffold. And Dennis and Bobby were not enthused about this concept. And they go out there, and they're climbing the ladder super, super slow. And Dennis gets to the top first, but he's terrified to not be on his hands and knees. Bobby can't even climb to the top. He's just clutching the ladder and not moving. Now Cornette's scolding him, "Guys, you are making me look bad. Get your ass up there. It's not that high. Get up. They get up there.
Should mention, by the way, that when Cornette says it's not that high, this appeared to be a legit 25 feet off the ground.
Minimum 20 feet, probably more.
It was so high.
Yeah. They get up there, and first they're crawling on their hands and knees a little bit, and they slowly start to stand over by where the guardrails are in the ends, and they start slowly walking back and forth, but they're getting a little more confident every time, and they start to get just a little bit comfortable way up there, and then it shakes just a little bit, and they panic and drop to the ground again. Terrified. Now Cornette's pissed at them for making him look bad. He's yelling at them, yells at Bubba, Bubba, get on up there and show them how easy it is. And the best thing is, Bubba went up there and showed them how easy it was. It's a 6'7", 350-pound man, climbed the ladder with ease, just walking up back and forth on the scaffold. Scaffold's probably 6 feet wide. No more. I wouldn't want to be up there, but you can walk on it if you're careful and not fall. So he's walking up there like it's easy. The Midnight Express is still panicking. And Cornette finally can take no more. If you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. I'll show you how it's done. And he puts down the microphone, and now from here on, the segment's almost silent. And he steps through the ropes, and he starts to climb up the ladder, and he gets 2, perhaps 3 rungs up. His ass is still on the top rope, so if he falls, he just falls back into the ring. And he clutches the ladder and begins to cry and screams. We can barely hear him because he dropped the mic. I'm scared! And that's where it ended. This was so awesome.
Is there anybody who is listening to this right now who is not immediately making comparisons to Charlotte and Sasha and the build for Hell in a Cell? Where every week they came out on television and they were so excited to be in the cell.
I can't wait to be in the cell.
They were so happy to be making history in this hellish chamber of horrors. And finally, Mick Foley had to do an angle on television where he told them they were both out of their minds and he was practically crippled because of this. The whole point of this was to show you, the viewer, how fucking scary a scaffold match was, how dangerous it was, how, in fact, somebody could die at Starrcade in this match, how the heels wanted nothing to do with it. You remembered the pumpkins being thrown off the scaffold and smashing into a million pieces on the ground. And as a viewer, you're thinking, oh my God, they're gonna fight up there on that scaffold.
In the sky.
What a fucking ticket seller. It's crazy. I couldn't even believe my eyes when I watched it. Just the irony of this video 2 weeks after Hell in a Cell. It's crazy. Or a week after.
Things used to be better.
Oh, my God.
Bill Dundee cut a promo. He's vowing to win some title in St. Louis, Central States Championship or something. Says he and Jimmy Garvin are going to win their match at Starrcade. He starts to bury Sam Houston for driving around in a pickup truck. And boy, that was sad for reading The Observer last week. Sam Houston's had a rough time.
Yeah.
He says he's going to win this championship. And he turns to Shivani and says, Shivani, I'm going to give you the chance to be the first man to shake the hand of the new champion. And he holds his hand out, and Shivani looks at him and says, I might as well wait. I don't want to look presumptuous. It was
Tony's so
awesome.
You know what I love about Dundee, too? This is what I love about all of this show. Even the guys who are geeks, and I don't mean like jobber geeks. I mean, Bill Dundee is a geek.
Yeah.
But he's a believable geek.
Yes.
Like, you can imagine that maybe you would walk into a Chili's in the middle of Memphis, and Bill Dundee would be there in this outfit.
Sure.
That is not hard to believe.
No, not at all.
Do I believe I'd go anywhere and see Bo Dallas in his gear with that fucking sign? Of course not. You watch Raw, and you see a bunch of guys just like you who are given stupid characters they have to play on television, and you feel pity for them. Back here, like, these geeks, they were believable geeks.
Yes.
You could believe that these guys were really like this.
No one gave Bill Dundee this jacket and these glasses and says, go call yourself a superstar.
Hell no. I can imagine going to Safeway and Bill Dundee's in the produce aisle dressed like this, cutting a promo on the fucking potatoes.
Yes. And the other part about this that was so great, yes, Shivani buried him and made him look like a geek, but he made him look like a geek compared to the other wrestlers. It's not like he said, I could kick your ass, Bill Dundee.
Of course not.
He said, those guys in St. Louis might beat you in a fight. But he didn't talk down to and belittle Bill Dundee. He just said, maybe you're getting a little ahead of yourself. You still have a tough challenge ahead of you.
Now let me tell you about the Mulkeys. Because they faced Tim Horner and Rick Lee. So
okay.
we just mentioned that Bill Dundee was a believable geek. Now we've got two jobbers, the Mulkeys. Now everybody's been comparing James Ellsworth to the Mulkeys. But there is a massive difference between the NWA Crockett jobbers and all of the jobbers on Raw and now James Ellsworth. If you look at these jobbers, the jobbers are in the ring, and not for 1 minute do they look like they're going to their doom. They're in there, and they're ready to wrestle.
They're warming up.
They're gonna compete.
They're gonna do their best.
And they're gonna try to win.
Yeah.
All these jobbers on Raw, they get interviewed, and they have to have their face down, and their shoulders slumped, and they're beaten before the bell even rings. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is why I mentioned the Danny Miles and the Donovan Dijak match. They introduce the guy, and he's standing there, and he's all pumped up, and he's ready to go, and he gets fucking killed. That's believable. Because in sports, like, how much did you absolutely hate? I dragged you to bowling.
Yeah.
You would never have bowled on your own because you were horrible at it, and it was no fun.
Right.
And you just fucking hated it.
Correct. Correct on all counts.
Think about all the people that went bowling that would lose every week, but they all thought, maybe this week I'll win. Mm-hmm. It's any competitor. That's why they compete. They go in there and they think, maybe I'm not the biggest guy or the strongest guy or the most athletic, but, maybe I can win this. The fucking Cubs won after 108 years. They didn't just quit being a baseball team after 105 years.
Yes.
They just kept trying,
Yeah.
and finally they won. All of these jobbers, they get in the ring, and they just stand there like, hey, the Mulkeys, we can beat Tim Horner.
Maybe today is my day.
This may be the day. It's believable.
Now
they got killed.
They were
They
wrong.
always do.
They were wrong, these dipshits. Let's talk about their opponents. Tim Horner and, as you were calling him, Rick Lee.
It was Ricky.
It was actually Ricky Lee Jones.
That's right, Ricky Lee Jones.
Okay. Now, I'm not blaming you or burying you, because here's the thing. I can legitimately say now, it occurred to me at this moment as I thought about this, because the first angle I remember was Savage Steamboat and the Ring Bell. That was late in 1986. I have legitimately now been watching pro wrestling for 30 years. Religiously, I think it's fair to say. I don't think I've ever heard of Ricky Lee Jones before, and I don't remember him ever doing anything after this. There was a man in there.
I don't remember him.
And
my notes read Ricky Lee Jones.
Okay.
But as I was given this entire speech and looking at it, I presumed this must be a typo. It's got to be Rick Lee.
Ricky
right?
Lee Jones.
There's no way his name was Ricky Lee.
Now, he's teaming with Tim Horner, who was a competent wrestler with no charisma to speak of whatsoever. Ricky Lee Jones was even more of that. He was trained. He was competent. I don't ever want to see him again. He won with a bridging leglock cradle. That's all I got.
You got more than me. All I could think about was the Mulkeys.
I was just stunned. There was a guy who went over on WCW Saturday Night in 1986 who I'd never heard of before. There's been guys in here who I've never seen or guys I was not terribly familiar with, but at least somewhere in my brain a synapse fired and said, oh yes, this guy, I read about him in Pro Wrestling Illustrated or something.
The Grim Reaper.
He didn't go over. He was a jobber.
Go over, that's right.
Ricky Lee Jones won, and he got the pin. Came out of nowhere, won one match, vanished.
What the hell was that football guy's name that's already gone?
Oh.
What the hell was his name?
Nighthawk.
That's right, the Nighthawk. He's already gone.
He's already gone.
Got in and got out.
That's true. There's two.
This business, he said, was not for me. By the way, for those of you that have not listened to the Max Smashmaster show, this show is great. You really got to listen to it. And Max has a great story about the guy who he wrestled in his first match and also his second match. I didn't know anything about it, but you have to listen to the question that I asked him and then the answer that I end up getting about the end of this man's career.
Ric Flair came out for a promo, bragged about the value of his jewelry and his suit. He said Nikita Koloff used to be a terrifying wrestler, but now he was nothing but Dusty Rhodes' stooge. Talked about Nikita's big muscles. Said Nikita was like a lot of women Flair knew.
He said that Nikita was like a dumb woman with huge boobs. And then he called out the women, and they all swooned and cheered for him.
Yes.
I was like, what a different world. Can you imagine?
He said Nikita was a full sweater and an empty head. It was a different world in 1986, that is for certain.
Can you imagine? Never mind.
Tully Blanchard versus Keith Patterson with referee Scrappy McGowan, who, when I think about it, has been around for a while, but like it really hit me what a great name that was tonight.
Yeah, they keep mentioning
Scrappy McGowan.
I love that Tully won, and then he raised his arms in victory.
Yeah.
And they cut away.
So happy.
He won. He was a winner. He wanted you to know that.
You have said this before, but the biggest, and there's many differences, but the biggest difference between wrestling in 1986 and wrestling in 2016 is how happy everyone is to be there.
Yeah.
The heels are happy they get a show to be there and show off what they can do and beat people up and get paid. The baby faces are happy they get to be there and entertain the people and inspire fans and give them heels what they got coming. Everyone's excited about everything.
Well, especially here because Starrcade's coming.
It was Starrcade.
I mean, they kept mentioning that over and over. It's here. It's finally here. Starrcade.
It was very clear the next week. But no one's there because they have to be. No one's there because they're broke. No one shows up and gets belittled by the boss and has to hang their head and walk away.
In fact, Ric Flair, the top heel, put over the boss. He said, you need to wear nice suits and be styling and profiling like me and Big Jim Crockett.
Yes.
Like, oh, okay.
Dillon and Blanchard joined Schiavone for a promo. He vowed the Four Horsemen would have would have 4 belts after Starrcade. Plugged the first blood match against Dusty Rhodes. Vowed the Andersons would beat the Rock and Rolls, and Flair would beat Nikita. And they didn't just say they would do all this. They explained they were going to get all this done because they were training harder than everyone else. Because even the heels have to show how dedicated they are.
They were competitors.
They were competitive athletes working to be the best. Brad Armstrong beat Tony Zane with a leg sweep.
You know, of all the matches for me to make this revelation, it was this one. Brad Armstrong was so generic, but he was a great worker. Mm-hmm. Like, he was a really great worker. And I don't know why it was this match, but I suddenly in the middle of this match realized, my God, the amount of talent in Crockett in 1986.
Oh, I thought you meant, yes.
No, it hit me like a ton of bricks.
I thought you said the amount of talent Brad Armstrong had.
Well, I mean, I knew that, but I just...
This was not the match to realize that.
Well, watching this match, I was realized, God, this guy is such a talented worker. And then I started thinking about the workers and the promo guys and the guys who could do both and the Midnights and the Rock and Rolls and Flair and the Andersons and Tully and all these guys. And I was like, holy fuck, what a roster.
Brad Armstrong was probably not in the top 15 babyfaces if we sat down and
counted. It
counted.
didn't matter.
But he was great.
The talent here was astounding.
I'm agreeing with you and making a point.
Yes.
As great
he
as
was on the low end of the totem pole.
As great as Brad Armstrong was, he was not even close to the middle. On that note, the Superpowers came out for a promo. Nikita said that Ric Flair had accused him of being soft. Then he removed his shirt to show how not soft he was.
Boy, did the American women mark out for this Russian.
Oh, there's more to come on this note.
Whew. Look at this hairy, strong man.
He's flexing, and he's bald, and he's got a hairy chest. And Dusty Rhodes points at him and says, take a good look at this, Ric Flair. This is what an athlete is supposed to look like. Dusty
is amazing.
Rhodes.
Yeah, he's
made fun
incredible.
of another man's physique. He's outstanding. Cornette and the Midnights came out for a promo. Now they were outraged. They claimed the NWA had taken their training video, they had doctored it, they had edited it just to make him and his men look foolish. And they promised they would have the real footage next week. Which turned out to be a lie.
They did lie.
They did lie. He showed his men jumping Ronnie Garvin at the start of the show because Garvin had a Louisville street fight with Big Bubba at the Starrcade. And here he admitted Bubba was merely 6'8", which even that's probably 4 inches off, but whatever.
What I got out of this was they showed some footage of Big Bubba doing splashes, and everybody just... Here's what I want you to imagine. Put a guy in the middle of the ring, maybe James Ellsworth, and playing the role of Big Bubba is a yoga ball. So I should get up on the middle rope and throw the yoga ball at James Ellsworth. And you know what'll happen? It'll hit him, and then it'll bounce high in the air and continue rolling. That is exactly what happened every time Big Bubba did one of his splashes. He hit, and he just bounced and kept rolling forward. The most horrible big splashes you've ever seen. And I thought, okay, so this guy was a jobber like less than a year ago. Now, he goes out here, he nearly kills guys with Samoan drops. He nearly kills guys with big splashes. And I'm rarely critical of decisions made in this era of the NWA, but their plan was for Jim Cornette to fall off the scaffold, and this guy was going to catch him.
Yes.
We all will see how that turned out. I'm going to spoil it because I just watched it.
Did you? The whole match?
He fucking missed him by 5 feet.
Yes.
He wasn't even close to the guy.
Oh.
It's funny because, like, I wouldn't do it, but Cornette rolls off the side of the scaffold. Spoiler alert, by the way, everybody. And he's hanging from it, and he's stretched out as long as he can possibly get. And so he's still probably, let's see, 25 feet. The ring is probably TV ring, 5 feet off the ground.
Sure.
Still a 20-foot drop.
Yeah.
He's stretching out with his arms as long as he can, so he's probably falling about 11, 12 feet.
Yeah.
I mean, he just falls, and he lands on his feet and falls down. I mean, it doesn't look that bad, but he destroyed his knee. And Big Bubba is like, he's in another zip code.
Yes.
And he goes over there to help the guy. And it's like, what in the fuck were you guys thinking? Like, what were you thinking? Crazy.
Yeah, not good. Rick Rude pinned Paul Garner with the DDT. Cornette returned for his 6th segment, I believe, in this 30-minute show. Fans were chanting Pumpkinhead at him. Cornette goes off about how much he hates that, how much he hates the Road Warriors, and he looks into the camera and he goes off on this match, and there was no comedy in this bit at all. He made it very clear. 4 men are climbing up the scaffold. 2 are coming down via ladder. 2 are coming down the hard way. And those 2 coming down the hard way, that's the end of everything. That is the end of your career. And he did say, quote, it's the end of life.
He promised death.
See, by the pay-per-view,
in the scaffold
you
match.
will see a minimum of 2 men die. That was the selling point here.
He played up those Pumpkinhead chants masterfully.
Oh, yeah, he's the best. That was that show. And then we go to November 22nd, 1986. And now it's Starrcade Week.
Everybody was so excited.
This was the NWA wrestlers' equivalent of Christmas morning or Christmas Eve, the night before. Everyone's so excited it's finally here. What we've been working and training and waiting for all year is finally here. It was like when Dana White on Twitter will go crazy about how it was Fight Week, except now he does it like 49 weeks a year. It loses its punch that way. This was a special week. The Rock and Rolls and Brad Armstrong came out for a promo.
Oh my God. Let's cut to the chase. 3 mega geeks who were 3 mega superstars in 1986. This is a prime example of, boy, has the world changed. I mean, these guys, this was like the New Day when they first debuted.
Okay, that's fair.
And they thought that they were going to be baby faces, and they were just hated.
These 3 men doing this promo in 2016 would get booed out of the building. That's true. Armstrong came off like a guy playing a character. Gibson didn't speak, which is for the best. And Ricky Morton, if Google any Ricky Morton promo the past 3 years, it would be the exact same thing, except he was 30 years younger. But yes. But they were not boring. They were not bland.
They were not boring.
They were not TM61.
Actually, it reminded me a lot of that TM61 promo that we saw in the locker room on NXT this week. Remember that?
Yes.
It was designed to get over their personalities, and we concluded that they're geeks.
Yeah, they were geeks. These guys were not nearly that geeky.
No, these guys were superstars.
Yeah.
But if you watch them today, total geeks.
I don't think I agree.
That's what I thought.
I don't think I agree with that. Tully Blanchard beat Alan West with a slingshot suplex. That was the highlight here was, again, Tully's like got full mount, and as he's throwing punches, in between punches, he screams at JJ, "It's here! It's this week! You can't wait!" Jim Cornette and the Midnight Express cut a promo. Cornette does a spiel. My men are great. The Road Warriors they're big and dumb, and my guy's going to outsmart them and throw them off the scaffold. And they go to leave.
Well, let's make sure that we mention that one of his key lines was, "We all value our lives very highly."
Yeah.
It's like, I do too.
Yes.
I can relate to this promo.
As they go to leave, and Shivani's never done this before, but he grabs Bobby Eaton by the arm and says, "Bobby, are you really comfortable going up on the scaffold?" And Cornette grabs Bobby, pulls him away, says, "What the hell are you doing?" and drags him away before he can answer. But the seed was planted. We never heard if Bobby Eaton was really comfortable going up on that scaffold.
I'm sad we haven't had a Dennis Condrey interview of late.
You only had the one.
No, it's too bad.
As far as I know,
it was
ever.
great.
Superpowers did a promo. Dusty just runs down the Horseman for a while. And then it's Nikita's turn. Nikita says, "Ric Flair, you say the only thing American women like about me is my tongue. Well, I'm going to show you something else they like about me." He takes off his shirt, and he flexes, and he sticks out his tongue. If you thought the women were going crazy for Flair, they love Nikita even more. And Nikita says, after they're disappointed by Space Mountain, they come see this. And he points to his tongue.
Wow.
I couldn't believe this made TV in 1986.
Wow.
Neither could the women in the crowd, but they liked it. They liked it a lot.
Hey, I got to say, this man from Russia had a way better tan than Rick Rude.
That's true.
He was downright pale.
Brad.
Then Dusty at the end did a totally classic rambling Dusty promo where neither of us had any earthly idea what he said.
I didn't even acknowledge it. Brad Armstrong versus Bill Mulkey.
All right, first off, I do like that this Mulkey goes out of his way to bleach his hair. Because in his mind, he's got to look like a star.
Oh, yeah.
They did an arm bar, and by they I mean Brad Armstrong. Brad Armstrong does an arm bar, and he's holding it. Now, keep in mind, most of these squash matches go like 30 seconds. Brad grabs a hold, an arm bar, and he's got him. Then he's still got him. And the clock is ticking on this 33-minute show. And he's still fucking got him in this arm bar. And I was like, is this on pause? Like, what is he doing with this arm bar? And then the Mulkey, because someone yelled boring in the studio in 1986.
This show is 30 minutes long, and they got a boring chant with an arm bar.
Like 5 minutes into the show, maybe 10. Somebody yells boring, and the Mulkey decides, well, I must save this match. Mulkey fires up and begins making a comeback on Brad Armstrong. He starts pounding on him. They do a tackle. They do a drop down, and then the Mulkey gets backdropped into the atmosphere, and then Brad Armstrong hits a side Russian leg sweep and pins him. What in the hell was this?
This is not the best example I ever saw of somebody getting themselves over.
What the fuck was this?
This left a lot to be desired. I can only imagine what had to be cut from this 30-minute show due to Brad Armstrong going over his time.
The only thing that I can figure is that everybody always said Brad is the funniest guy. You just never see it on television. Mm-hmm. And this was like his idea of a rib.
That's possible.
I'm going to go out here.
That actually is probably possible.
I'm going to put the Mulkey in an arm bar for a full minute. I'm going to get a boring chant. I'm going to give the guy a comeback, and then I'm going to beat him. My mind was blown watching this match.
Paul Ellering came out for a promo. He said it was time to talk about physics.
He said, let's skip the quantum, and let's just talk about physics.
What a weirdo.
I'm like, what?
So he said he had done the math, he had done the calculations, and if by the time those men fell from the scaffold, by the time they hit the mat, they would be traveling at 86 miles per hour.
I mean, you may be right. I don't know.
I did the math.
Oh, you did? Oh, good.
It was difficult. Now, someone check my work because I was doing the math while driving.
We check your worth every show. But we'll check your work now.
Check that as well. It's quite possible I made an error, but 86 miles per hour, that works out to about 128 feet per second. The rate of gravity on the surface of the Earth is about 32 feet per second. That's the acceleration rate due to gravity. That means that to hit a speed of 86 miles per hour, they would have to fall for about 4 seconds, which would mean they'd be falling about 256 feet.
I don't think the scaffold was that high.
The one that Cornette was working on certainly was not.
Huh. Should have been a manager in 86.
I should have come out there. Paul Ellering's full of shit.
Paul, I've addressed your calculations.
I have checked your work.
I will not be hitting the mat with such velocity.
I will merely be hitting the mat at 30... What would that be? 18 miles an hour or whatever.
It is one of those things where... I mean, if the real number is 18, do you have to say 86? 18's still pretty bad.
Yes.
I don't want to hit the ground going 18 miles an hour.
Even just using feet. You don't have to... It's a 25-foot fall. That's enough. You don't have to bullshit me with 250. And it's not like you said, 20 miles an hour or 25. 86? Bullshit. That's the reason I checked it.
And these baby
Instinctively,
faces...
I knew this was bullshit.
These baby faces are supposed to tell the truth.
Yeah.
Cornette could lie.
It would be great if Cornette lied.
I like to think that Paul Ellering really tried to do the math.
That's possible.
And like me, he fucked it up by 10, by an order of 10.
It's possible.
It's 18. Let's see. I put the 8 on the other side.
So it's back to the Starrcade Control Center. They showed Nikita's finisher. They showed Flair's finisher.
Hold on.
Okay.
They showed Nikita's finisher.
My notes are brief because I was doing math.
And then Tony Schiavone says, Ric Flair, a man of many moves. Let's see the figure 4. And I thought, that's what you came up with for Ric Flair? A man of many moves?
So we saw Nikita's sickle a bunch of times. We saw Ric Flair's figure 4 a bunch of times. We saw Tully and Dusty injuring each other over and over and over again as you realize just how long this blood feud had been going on. And he ran down all 95 matches on the card.
I thought this segment was so great. I thought Tony was great. I thought the whole idea behind it was great. We're focusing on the most important match in the main portion of this, since that is the main event. Flair and Nikita show the highlights of the Dusty deal. I thought it was great. He
came off, how he's supposed to come off. He was like Joe Rogan running down the card.
That's right.
This was not dire straits. This was not a life and death situation. This was going to be a really fun sporting event.
That's right.
And he was happy. Tony was happy. Crusher Khrushchev beat Keith Patterson with the worst sickle you ever saw.
I'm pretty sure this was the best match I've ever seen Crusher Khrushchev in up to this point, and it was horrible.
You watch this and you think, no wonder the USSR collapsed. No way that nation could stand having this guy do this.
He's a fake Russian.
Still,
in storyline.
Still. Just by association. I was terrified. We were well into our second episode here, and I was terrified we would not get a go-home promo from number 1 Paul Jones.
Lucky you.
Thank the good Lord above.
Lucky me. Lucky all of us.
Number 1 Paul Jones appears. And before he even speaks, Tony says, this could be your last promo with a full head of hair. And Paul Jones gets the mic.
Now, before Paul Jones even says a word,
yes,
the first thing Paul Jones does is he looks right, and then he looks left, and then he looks forward. Because he doesn't know where the fuck he's supposed to be looking. That's his gimmick.
Yes, just to not know which camera is on.
You know what's funny is Flair does a go-home promo at the end, and this promo is just out of this world. And Flair is just cutting the best promo. And in the middle of the promo, they do a camera switch, and he doesn't even skip a beat turning to look at the other camera. Mm-hmm. I mean, this guy's so good that he's cutting this promo He's totally on fire. At the same time, he's absolutely aware of what the crowd's doing and saying, and where the director is telling him to look at any given moment. Like, I don't think Flair gets enough credit for how good he was at doing these promos in this setting.
Yeah.
It was amazing. Paul Jones has no idea if he's on Earth.
Yes, let's get back to Paul Jones. First, the world must pause as he determines slowly which camera he should be looking into. I believe he finally got it right. Then he begins to speak and almost immediately loses his train of thought. Eventually, he gets back on board. He promises Wahoo is going to lose a strap match. Big Mama's going to be a bald-headed geek, and there's no way Manny Fernandi is going to get in that cage.
He said it twice.
Manny Fernandi. And finally he says, you tune into Starrcade and you'll all see what it's all about. And he leaves.
That's the pro.
You'll all see what it was all about.
It's like the hokey pokey.
This led immediately to Rick Rude and Manny Fernandi versus Bill Tab and Brody Chase.
I do love that Bill Tab is a jobber, but he doesn't want to be, clearly, because his tights say Big Bill.
Big Bill.
That's right.
And he's got the second or third, one of the 2 or 3 biggest guys in the show.
He should have been, he deserved better than this.
The bell rings and Rude eyes up and down, and Rude was impressed. Then he beat the hell out of him, but he was impressed with the man's physique. And Manny Fernandi won with the flying burrito.
Now let's repeat that. Manny Fernandi won with the flying burrito.
That's what they called it.
Which was, in fact, the name of his finisher.
Yeah.
And he used that name as a babyface.
Yes. The flying burrito, because he's Mexican, you see. The Andersons, Tully Blanchard, and J.J. Dillon cut a promo.
Ole'd been at the mall.
Ole's homemade shirts are the best.
He's got a shirt this week. It's just like a plain shirt. I think it was a purple, maybe. Mm-hmm. I don't even remember. I just remember it says on the front of it in block letters. I don't even know if he could do this at the mall anymore. He could when I was growing up. But the shirt says, "Damn, I am good."
Yeah. See, you can now. They're actually much fancier. There's like Photoshop and...
Yeah, you get online now.
Well, you can do it at the mall, too. There are make-your-own T-shirt booths. Or
still in 2016?
Yeah. If you go to the right mall.
I clearly don't go to the right mall.
I guess not. They're out there. They're much better than this one, though. They're much better than this. For those of you who don't remember the early to mid-'80s and weren't around, when you got your own T-shirt made at the mall, here's what they did. They took a color of shirt, they took felt, they cut the felt into shapes, and ironed the felt onto the shirts. End of options. That's all you could do. So even... There's no way to have it not look ghetto. And Ole is out there. Damn, I am good, it says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn, I am good.
And if you saw this, you would think, no, you are not. You can't be if you're wearing that shirt. So JJ starts cutting this promo. And when it starts, he's on fire. He's going off about how Flair survived a plane crash. He can survive a sickle. Tully Blanchard, he's been coming after Dusty's hand and Dusty's leg. Now he's coming for Dusty's blood. And he gets to the cage match and he says, rock and rolls, you've got youth on your side, but the Andersons have experience and talent and power. And he pauses and he doesn't know how to end. And he just says, they're awesome. And there is a pause and no one is quite sure what to do. And Ole steps in to save the day and basically says, we are going to win all our matches. That was funny.
And then evil cackling by all the bad guys.
Absolutely.
They're so excited that Starrcade Week is here, and that means at this time next week, they're all going to have belts.
Yeah. Midnight Express versus Art Pritz and Vernon Deaton. I don't know if anyone out there keeps track of these shows or my notes in the newsletter, but I think, this is where it hit me, I believe Vernon Deaton only works with the Midnight Express.
I have to go back and look. I don't remember.
It's certainly frequent. The Midnights won with a Boston Crab knee drop combo that knocked Vernon, or one of the guys, out cold. The ref did the raise the arm 3 times deal and called for the bell. And this is done, as Cornette showed, or explained, to show the damage a man could do when he fell from a great height, as is going to happen in the scaffold match. As stupid as that match is, I cannot fault them at all for how they're promoting it.
Oh, man, they're doing the job of a lifetime.
Oh, it's amazing.
Not as good, however, as a job that Baron von Raschke Wahoo McDaniel and the Kansas Jayhawkers all did together. This is the motliest crew. I mean, you think of the League of Nations, they got nothing on this crew.
Couple of Midwest cowboys and an Indian.
That's true.
And a
Russian.
And a mad German.
A German, I apologize.
Mad German. The point of this promo is that one way or another, they were all going to work together, and they were all going to get Manny Fernandi in that cage.
You know, we haven't been watching this for a little while, and so at first I just looked at everybody and I thought, why is Baron von Raschke with the Wahoo and the Jayhawkers? And then I remembered the angle they did and how awesome it was when the evil mad German turned babyface and everybody went nuts for him. Just like everybody went nuts for Nikita when he turned, another evil foreigner. It's like you know what it is? I'm going to tell you what it is. These fans have not been fooled repeatedly like the WWE fans nowadays have. There have been so many swerves and half-ass turns that when a guy turns nowadays, there's like a large portion of the audience that really isn't sure about it. Like, I think there's still fans that aren't sure about Seth Rollins. But these fans, it's like back then when you turned, for the most part, when you turned, you turned. And so the Baron turned babyface, and they love him. There's no second-guessing him. Same with the Russian. There's no second-guessing Nikita. He turned, and boom, he's the guy.
The other part of that is there are no shades of gray in 1986.
Hell no.
There are heroes, and there are villains.
As it should be.
Yes. And when they did these turns, looking back, usually they didn't even tease them that much, if at all.
No, it just happened. But there was a reason for it.
And they explained it, and it always made sense in the end. The only teased turn we've seen, I think, is when number one Paul Jones for a while was attempting to bribe Manny Fernandi. And eventually,
it worked.
Eventually, Fernandi accepted his offer.
There was no swerve.
There was no swerve.
He kept offering him money, and finally he offered him enough.
He met his price.
That was it.
Yes. But there's nothing is ever done halfway. And the other thing, there's no start and stop turn. No one turns 6 times in a year. Although it's coming with Lex Luger. But guys are good guys, and then they are bad guys. And when they turn, they're done. Ric Flair came out for a promo talking about how big this show is going to be. Could be a $20 million gate.
Oh, yeah? Wow.
That's what he said. And he says, Don't
think Starrcade did a $20 million gate.
Back in 1983, I was about to face Harley Race for my second chance at the World Championship. And I'm not going to lie, I was scared to death. And Nikita Koloff, I know you're going through the same thing right now. But I'm not scared at all. He started listing all the men he had wrestled and won in Yugoslavia, China, Spain, all over Europe, all over North and South America, all over Asia. He says, so if you think I'm going to be scared of a Russian, you got another thing coming. This is great.
You know what's so great about it? This is hardly a revelation, but this was a classic example of taking some reality and weaving it into a promo, hyping up a fake match, and turning it into a believable promo. This was amazing. Everything about this was amazing.
And it led to the last match here, the go-home main event for Starrcade 86, Arn Anderson versus Tony Zane. Zane actually hit a flurry of punches, and then Arn won with a gourd buster. And then all the horsemen got together for one more go-home promo. And as lame as Ole's t-shirt was, when J.J. Dillon said, guys, I got gifts for you, because it's Starrcade. I told you it was Christmas Eve, everyone gets a present. Dillon gives out the horsemen matching jackets.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like, and it's embroidered with horsemen on the back. The black, just like an athletic type jacket, and embroidered, and they look classy and cool. It was ring wear. It was something to wear down to the ring so everyone knew you were a horseman. You'd earned this jacket. Flair promises he's going to no-sell Nikita's sickle and then break his skinny legs. I've watched a lot of Nikita over the past couple of years. His skinny legs do not pop out to me.
Well, you got to make a storyline if you're a heel.
I guess so. Arn says our record in cage matches is impeccable, and Tully Blanchard's specialty is cutting people open. And I was so excited and so happy to show what they can do with Starrcade. And finally, Arn makes fun of Nikita for being bald, and the show goes off the air.
I loved these two shows. I cannot wait for Starrcade.
Can we skip Survivor Series and watch Starrcade?
Man, oh man. I think, well, what we did was we watched 2 weeks here, so we're 2 weeks ahead. Mm-hmm. And so I think maybe next week we will watch the top matches from Starrcade. Because we don't have
matches. I do not need, God bless Jimmy Valiant. God bless the Kansas Jayhawks. That's a better example.
We'll skip the Jayhawks. I'm not sure I can skip Valiant.
I don't think I need to see Ron Garvin and Big Bubba.
Probably not.
There's some stuff on here we can skip.
But I think next week we will do Starrcade, and then the week after is Survivor Series. We can do pros and cons. We can compare and contrast Starrcade 86 and Survivor Series 2016.
I may take my life here on this podcast.
Oh, Vinny, come on.
You're gonna be mine all night long.
But we'll start at the beginning, as we always do, with the November 29th, 1986 show. As you noted, this was taped before Starrcade, but aired afterwards.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out why Jim Cornette was out there all healthy and happy. Then I realized pre-taped.
Pre-taped. So they couldn't talk about Starrcade, couldn't talk about the results at all. So this show was focused 100% on pushing the Bunkhouse Stampede. And a new sponsor in Weider Fitness.
That brought back memories. Oh, the days of Weider Fitness.
The only reference they had to Starrcade was David Crockett informing us it had been the greatest wrestling event ever.
Ever.
Which he probably thought it was.
Let's talk about this Bunkhouse Stampede. They had a Bunkhouse Stampede in 1985, which was won by, of all people, Dusty Rhodes.
No.
Yeah.
Come on now.
Who could possibly win in 1986? So, the way it worked was, they had a tour of matches. They took the Bunkhouse Stampede all over the loop.
Uh-huh.
And they had various winners in each town.
Yeah.
And if you won the Bunkhouse Stampede, I believe you got $25,000 for winning.
Yes.
And then all of the winners would go into a big final Bunkhouse Stampede.
Yes.
And the winner of that was the ultimate winner.
Yes.
The winner of that would be Dusty Rhodes.
Of course. The Bunkhouse Stampede, by the way, it was a battle royal street fight.
It was a battle royal where you could bring weapons.
Yes.
Now, normally I watch this show and I look at it and I marvel at how it's so logical. It makes so much sense. They go out of their way to not do things that insult your intelligence. But it came to a screeching halt here with the Bunkhouse Stampede. In the 1985 Bunkhouse Stampede, the Road Warriors came to the ring with their spikes.
Sure. And they fought in them.
Their spikes are very, very sharp.
6-inch pointed blades all over their back and shoulders.
So this leads us to a bunch of questions. Why, for example, would you then bring a 2x4?
Or a belt.
Or a strap?
And not even a championship belt, just a off-the-rack JCPenney's belt.
If you know that you're allowed to bring the Road Warriors spikes, why would you not bring a knife? A knife is sharp.
Sure is.
Why would you not bring a gun?
Also sharp.
Is there a... No, it's not. But it discharges bullets.
The bullets are sharp.
Point of this is there an
a bayonet would be sharp.
Is there an unwritten set of rules? Did somebody at some point come on and explain what you could and could not bring to the Bunkhouse Stampede? And if they did, shouldn't somebody have complained that the Road Warriors are allowed to bring spikes and they could only bring a 2x4? This was ridiculous.
How about a flamethrower? You're fighting 25 guys and you can hit them all at once.
Now, in this review, we're going to talk about a lot of things that were a lot better back then than they are today. But a couple of weeks ago, we reviewed Starrcade. Starrcade was an absolute mess of screwjob finishes. There was like a screw job in every single match.
Pretty much, yeah.
It felt like a show that jumped the shark. Well, amazingly enough, the Bunkhouse Stampede, the rules have changed this year. The rules are that there are battle royals all over, and if you win, you get $25,000. Except apparently there's one where there's $100,000 on the line. Which right there, you're straining credulity by offering $100,000 to the winner of a Bunkhouse Battle Royal. And there will not be a final one, but whoever wins the most is the winner.
I see.
But of course, I guess it's a spoiler from 30 years ago. It ends up being a tie, and we end up having a bunkhouse cage match.
Aha.
It's preposterous. This NWA Crockett is careening out of control at this point, with more to come.
Well, on that note, to hype up said Bunkhouse Stampede, out came Jimmy Garvin, and he had ditched his sequins for blue jeans and a sports jacket. And he hyped up the Stampede, promised he'd been practicing yanking off his belt to whip men. That's what he said.
He is overexcited for the Bunkhouse Stampede. That's how I would describe it.
He was always overexcited.
He is excited that there are no rules, and he is excited that he can make a lot of money because Christmas is coming.
He said that if you think there's nothing better than Christmas, there's the Bunkhouse Stampede. And if you think there's nothing better than gorgeous Jimmy Garvin, well, you're right about that one.
I'll tell you what's better than Jimmy Garvin is Precious, who, if you'll notice, and I did, she's growing out her perm.
Aha.
It's starting to straighten out on top, but it's still permed on the bottom.
Okay.
It's got to go. Like, she's so pretty, but it's the worst hairdo you could possibly put on this woman.
Dude,
it's horrific.
It's 1986.
I know, but she
There
didn't
are no
have it for
good
a long
options.
time. She had a good option when she was, like, a year ago when they first showed up. Her hair was straight. She looked 1,000 times better. I guess they're heels.
Doesn't want to outshine gorgeous Jimmy.
Well, that's not difficult.
Bill Dundee versus Alan Martin. Fans were chanting for Sam Houston, which was pissing Dundee off. Dundee wrestled this match in tennis shoe cowboy boots. I thought the only pair of these in existence belonged to that one Hart brother. Forget if it's Keith or Bruce.
Well, you know, you used to be able to get wrestling. You could get your real boots and have them resold for wrestling.
Sure.
Yeah. Buddy actually resold my boots for me at one point.
Did he?
Yeah, because you had to draw. This is in the old days. There was a place called Stagecoach Boots, and you would send them a tracing of your foot, and that's how they made sure the boots fit, because you didn't actually go there. So I traced my foot, and for some reason, the boots were like wide. Like they were super wide. And I wrestled on these things for years. I felt like I should be swimming. Those flipper thingamajiggers.
Yeah.
And one day, Buddy, I don't even remember everything that happened, but he took my boots, and next thing I know, they came back and they fit perfectly.
Excellent. I think I got my boots from Stagecoach, but
I'm sure you did.
Whoever I got them from, you draw your foot and take your measurements, and I mailed that in, and they called me back to verify that my calves were really that skinny. Just to make sure.
I don't know if they exist anymore. I think they may have been put out of business by High Spots.
Sure. Yeah.
Because they charged a lot of money for them boots.
Yes, they did.
I spent like $900 or something.
I did not spend that much, but it was well into 3 digits.
But I only wore one pair of boots my whole career.
That's true.
One pair of boots.
Yeah. Anyway, Bill Dundee won with a sit-down splash. Jim Cornette and the Midnight Express came out for a promo. No reference to scaffolds or falling thereof of. Only wanted to talk about the Bunkhouse Stampede. He just said, imagine if you were in New York City and $100,000 hit the open street and you had construction workers and lawyers and cops and hairdressers all out there fighting for this money. That's what the Bunkhouse Stampede is going to be like. I hope it's better than that. He also promised they were not done with the Road Warriors.
Said the winner got, quote, up to $25,000. What does that mean?
I don't know.
I thought it was very clear the winner got $25,000. What does up to $25,000 mean?
Well, later Baby Doll, I think, said it would be 25 or 50.
It seems like they may not have known what the hell was going on.
That's
here.
quite possible.
And Dennis Condrey's there. He's all ugly and mean and shifty looking. Just standing there. He was awesome.
Midnight Express versus the Mulkey Brothers.
By the way, speaking of the scaffold, apparently one of the ideas they had before Cornette just hung on the thing and fell down and didn't get caught and blew out his knee, apparently they considered having the Road Warriors lift him up, and one of them would hold his legs, and the other would hold his torso, and they would hold him over the edge of the scaffold, like laid out straight, and let go, and then Bubba would catch him.
That's much worse.
You don't say. He would be dead.
They threw a Mulkey out of the ring to show that Bubba could catch him, and then Bubba threw him back in.
How ironic.
Yeah. And then later, they went to just throw him through the ropes, a very standard, normal bump to take, and the Mulkey bounced all over the place like a pinball. And after hitting a top rope elbow, Eaton stood on the Mulkey's hands, pulled up on his feet, and that was how he covered him for the pin. Brad Armstrong came out for a promo. He said the Stampede threatened your life and your career, but there was a lot of money at stake. At this point, this became the greatest episode ever when Bullet Bob showed up.
That's right, Bullet Bob.
He interrupted his son, said hi to everyone, said he had a surprise for Brad backstage. Shivani, as they were leaving, said, Bob, please come back and talk later. And Bob said, okay. Now, this show seemed short compared to what the announcers were saying, and there was definitely something they were talking about that happened that we didn't see, so I don't know if the original tapes got destroyed, or there was some gross formatting error, but something happened on the show that we can only guess at.
So maybe it's because we saw Bullet Bob in TNA a few years ago, and he was really old then, but it was funny seeing him here. This was 30 years ago, and he still looked pretty old.
He was 40.
He was 1 year older than Chris Jericho.
He looked at least 15 years older than Chris Jericho.
It was weird.
Yeah.
He was in good shape, though. He may have been in better shape than Chris Jericho, but he looked older.
Yeah. The Barbarian versus Paul Garner.
Okay, we talked about Paul Garner before. He looks like you if you lost 100 pounds.
Basically.
And what was funny about it was, when I saw him, I thought, Vinny better never lose 100 pounds.
Yeah.
Because if he looks like Paul Garner, that's a big step down.
This is skinny fat is no good. He's a big, tall dude. He's skinny fat. He's got the Abe Lincoln beard. I think part of it, so his singlet, you know, most singlets are like a tank top. So it's open down like midway through your chest. This singlet was open almost all the way down to his belly. So his flat chest was exposed more.
Man.
It was not a good look with this flat chest and skinny arms and his gut.
Speaking of not good looks, Shaska Wadley with that tuxedo top and his tiny trunks underneath.
Oh, yeah.
So inappropriate.
So Paul Garner flopped around like a fish, and it was fun, and Barbarian pinned him with a diving headbutt. And then Shaska cut a promo on behalf of the Barbarian, in which he explained Barbarian had been on an Asian tour. And he had beaten so many Asians on this Asian tour, they'd kicked him out of the country.
They ran him out of the country. Which is difficult.
All of them?
On a landlocked...
Singapore?
I mean, I guess he
Laos?
didn't say Japan, so...
He is an Asian.
Yeah. That's better than the Orient, which Mike Tenay said.
I suppose that's true.
For another 2 decades.
Tim Horner and Art Pritz had a bad squash match.
You missed when Shaska Wadley said that him and Barbarian were a reckoning crew.
What I wrote here was he ran his mouth for a while, and the more he said, the less I understood.
It was a great promo.
It was
but
not
I don't
boring.
understand. It was not a great interview, but it was a great promo.
Sure.
He said a lot of words excitedly.
I got no information. I was entertained, though. Tim Horner and Art Pritz had a bad, boring wrestling match. There were many arm bars, some bad bumps. Tim won with an O'Connor roll. And after he pinned this man with a wrestling maneuver using superior leverage to hold his shoulders to the mat, they said, that just shows you how dangerous Tim Horner could be in that bunkhouse stampede. A battle royal when you use weapons to throw guys out of the ring. The Kansas Jayhawks cut a promo. Said, hey, this bunkhouse stampede, you can bring weapons. We use bullwhips and cowboy boots and 2x4s all the time anyway. Don Kernodle versus Randy Barber.
Oh, man. Usually, when you watch one of these matches, you can very easily look at the screen and go, I can figure out which man is the star and which man is the jobber. Not this match.
Nope. Two vaguely muscular men, but not terribly lean. Both balding. Both with kind of random facial hair. Both pale.
I mean, if you took a
totally
normal...
blank gear.
If I brought my wife into the room and I said, which one is the star and which one is the jobber, she'd probably say, they're both jobbers?
Yes.
She would not say, oh, Don Kernodle, that guy's a star.
That guy's Mike.
And you know what? I've seen guys that don't have great physiques. I've seen a lot of them in my lifetime that don't have great physiques, don't have a good look, but they can sure go in the ring. Don Kernodle showed me absolutely no more than Randy Barber did. They literally were exactly the same.
I paid attention.
Kind of ugly, not very good. A basic match.
Don Kernodle was a trained wrestler who knew a few amateur throws. Randy Barber was 250 pounds of complete dead weight. You may as well have yanked a heavy bag out of the gym, thrown it into the ring, and had a match with that. May have had more charisma than either man. Kernodle won with a diving clothesline in a terrible match. The Rock and Roll Express got a promo.
Okay, this was weird. So, they said they're both injured, and they may have to take some time off, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, on the next show, they're injured, and it is explained that Ricky hurt his... Or maybe it was... No, yeah, Ricky hurt his arm, and Robert hurt his leg, but they claimed it was at Starrcade. Or am I wrong about that? I could have sworn they said it was at Starrcade.
The Andersons did work the arm and leg over at Starrcade.
All right, so maybe the injury was before Starrcade.
Yes,
all right.
It was worsened at Starrcade. Aggravated, that's what I'm looking for. Cornette was back. He was upset people were calling him Pumpkinhead. He destroyed a toy pumpkin with his tennis racket in a magical sight. He promised again the Midnights would take out the Road Warriors in the Bunkhouse Stampede. They would win the $25,000 check. He promised, for that kind of money, you will see men turn on their brothers and friends turn on their friends. He left. I'm thinking, won't your tag team partners also then turn on each other? And lo and behold, in the next match, the announcers brought up that exact point. So it was the Kansas Jayhawks versus Bill Tabb and Phil Brown.
Well, I will say that is a very interesting talking point leading to the culmination of this year's Bunkhouse Stampede.
I suppose so. Phil Brown, you know how they don't do it quite as obviously anymore, but every year after WrestleMania, WWF would bring in a whole crew of new guys. There'd be like 8 new names all over TV, and they'd see who stick. Apparently after Starrcade, the WCW Saturday Night crew would bring in a whole crew of new jobbers. And here was Phil Brown, out there in sweatpants and a sleeveless V-neck. He was atrocious.
I will read all of my notes here. Won't take long.
Right.
They beat on Phil Brown for 100 years.
Yeah.
Hit a million moves.
Yes.
Then pin him.
Yeah.
This was horrible.
By the time
Did I miss anything?
No. You were more succinct than I was. I will just add that by the time this was over, it was already time to build up to next Starrcade. Okay, so the Armstrongs returned, and they were all fired up and angry. Apparently, at some point earlier in the show, Bullet Bob had been attacked by Jimmy Garvin and Bill Dundee 2-on-1 with a garbage can. Now they wanted a 2-on-2 fight, fair and square. So Garvin and Dundee accepted the challenge. So it was Bob and Brad versus Bill and Jimmy. The early 5 minutes here with the Armstrongs just whipping heel ass all over the place was awesome. Bob was 47 here, and as you noted, he looks older, significantly older than Chris Jericho does in 2016, but he was showing so much more energy than anyone else in the show. Got the heat on Brad a couple times, actually.
There's a moment where they're beating on Brad, and they had the best throw to a commercial you've ever seen.
Yes.
Nowadays, a guy is thrown out of the ring, and the other guy does this big dive, nearly kills himself. There are bodies everywhere. It's like a train wreck. And Michael Cole calmly says, Raw rolls on. And they go to commercial.
We'll be back as Raw rolls on.
Now, first off, this is so patterned. It happens in every match. Like, I literally can hit the fast forward button just before they go to commercial because I know what's coming every time. If this were real, would you ever throw to commercial right after a big spectacular train wreck with dudes flying out of the ring?
Not if you could avoid it.
Can you imagine in the middle of a football game where a dude's rushing and he's just about to get the goddamn touchdown and they go to commercial right then? Would that ever happen in a million years?
That would be odd.
So, they're doing this match, and Tony Schiavone explains, we've got to take a commercial break. David Crockett is sure that at this exact moment, Brad Armstrong is going to make that hot tag. Mm-hmm. And so he's furious at the idea that we're going to go to commercial.
Yes.
And he's screaming at the top of his lungs, no, Tony, no, no, begging them not to go to commercial because he thinks the man might make a hot tag.
Yeah.
And they finally just go to a hot tag, And, of course, they come back and the match is still going on. But it was so real.
Yeah.
It was so realistic. Like, why would you possibly go to a commercial in the middle of this heated match? He couldn't even wrap his head around this concept.
So the match kind of wandered a bit. We had both teams getting heat segments for a while. We had Bill Dundee quite randomly spraying perfume in the Armstrong's eyes, the match just continuing.
We had fans chanting, Dundee's a shrimp.
Dundee's a shrimp. And finally, they all just started brawling, and the ref threw out the match for the double DQ. It was fun while it lasted.
It was fun. And then they have a promo, and Bullet Bob, straight out of the James Ellsworth playbook, says, 2 arms, 2 legs, that's it. We'll finish this war.
That was his point, yes.
What a babyface.
He said he had, I think his exact words were that he had stuff to do, but he explained he would be back in the territory because this war is just getting started.
That's right. He's got stuff to do. And then Tony had a really, really awkward thing at the end where he goes, Bob's leaving, but he'll be right back. And then he realized it sounded like he was going to be back like in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And so then he tried to explain what was going on.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
So they demanded a no time limit match. I guess that match here we saw here was supposed to be a time limit draw. It was clearly a DQ, but that doesn't matter. It was a fun match.
Well, it's no time limit, and it cannot end until one side can't stand no more.
Uh-huh.
And then Bob added, if you know what I mean. I was like, I think I know what that means.
Pretty straightforward.
When one guy can't get up, the other guy wins.
Yeah. So, the December 6th show.
Believe it or not, this was the better show. I know that other one sounded really exciting.
So now the announcers, because this was taped after Starrcade, they could openly announce what had happened. They discussed all the championship matches, who retained their belts, who lost them. The Russians then came out for a promo bragging about still being U.S. Tag Team Champs. And they also called out Nikita and his friend, Dusty Rhodes. We had the new TV champion, Tully Blanchard.
Before you go to this,
Right.
First off, I cannot believe that Crusher Khrushchev is a champion. Like, what kind of world
Twice.
do we live in?
He had that Mid-Atlantic title, too.
Dude. So the first thing that I noticed, and literally the only thing that I could notice, I didn't hear a word they said. I was just salivating and staring at those big, gold, shiny belts. They were so big, and they were so gold, and they were so shiny.
Yeah.
And I was just transfixed watching them and looking at them. And I thought, look at these stupid belts we have nowadays.
They're copper.
We got one belt that's mostly leather because the big W in the middle of it it's not even like a full plate.
Yeah.
It's some fancy-ass modern cacophony of whatever. It's disgusting. And then you've got the SmackDown tag belts, or the Raw tag belts. Whichever one looked like 2 pennies.
Yeah.
Like, who would ever want... I mean, I realize that Vince... I mean, how long has it been since he's done a sport? Never? I think he wrestled a little bit in high school or something. I don't even know what...
time.
I mean, is this guy so old that he can't remember that gold is number 1 and silver is number 2 and brass is number 3?
Or bronze.
Bronze. Who in the world wants 2 bronze belts?
I don't know.
They're so ugly. And the silver SmackDown belts or whatever, the other tag belts. And then he had a belt that looked like a butterfly. All of these ugly, grotesque belts. It's just amazing to me. Like, a belt used to be made of solid gold. You were rich.
Yeah.
You had a belt. It was made of gold. Like, what could possibly be better than that? That's better than a gold medal. That's a whole belt made out of gold. I just can't understand these belts nowadays. It sickens me.
So Tully Blanchard made his first World TV title defense against Mike Jackson. You will recall, I don't know, 3-4 months ago, Ric Flair just randomly had a great match with Mike Jackson on a Saturday night.
Dude, this Mike Jackson was the real deal.
This guy clearly could go. Tully knew it too. They did not get nearly as much time as that Flair match, but they had a very fun 4 or 5 minute competitive match. And finally, Tully just finished him off with a slingshot suplex and won.
I realize it takes more than just wrestling ability to be a star, but this guy's way better than Don Kernodle.
Yes.
Just doesn't seem right.
And his look is at least on par.
Yeah, he's in better shape.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not like Rick Rude,
No.
but he had a little bit of definition. He was a little too hairy. He had a horrible bald head.
Yeah.
It's like that bald head with hair everywhere else.
Exactly. He needed to either shave or put on a mask.
Yeah.
Rock and Roll Express came out to hype up the Bunkhouse Stampede. Robert said nothing.
He literally just stood there looking sheepish the whole time. I guess that's his charm.
That's one word for it.
There's the blonde guy who's all excited, and then there's a sheepish brunette guy. The quiet
one?
The quiet one. That's what he is.
I hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah.
The quiet, shy one.
You got to have one bombastic guy, and you got to have the quiet, shy one.
Takes all kinds. So Jim Cornette, of course, had been thrown off a scaffold and nearly killed. So he's in a hospital bed getting his knees put back together. So the NWA, in all their wisdom, said, we've got the Midnight Express. We've still got Big Bubba. Don't really trust any of these people to talk. Let's just stick Baby Doll with them. Now, I realize after Baby Doll's last heel turn, Cornette had come on TV and kind of sort of said that if she's okay with Ric Flair, she's okay with me, or something along those lines. So they hadn't totally dropped it. But Jim Cornette and Baby Doll had a blood feud over the summer, just a few months ago. So Baby Doll is out there with them, and she says that tonight in Cleveland, they're going to get their revenge, throwing the Road Warriors off a scaffold. And then Condrey stepped in to do his share of talking as well.
He was better than her.
Much better than her, actually. Promised to close everything that was open on their head, open everything that was closed, and throw them off the scaffold like a sack of potatoes.
Let me talk about this Dennis Condrey.
Say again, he was better than Baby Doll.
So Dennis Condrey, during this promo, said, at minimum, because I might have missed one or two, fella, Jack, fella, baby, and boss.
Yes, boss.
Boss. So, it's nearing the end of 1986, and that means it is nearing the end of
Dennis Condrey.
Dennis Condrey. At some point in the next 4 weeks, Dennis Condrey says to Bobby Eaton, I'll see you tomorrow. And then, was gone.
Didn't see him for years.
Just dropped off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
He never talked to anybody about it.
No.
He didn't tell his partner. He just was done.
One day, Bobby shows up at the building.
And you know what's funny about it?
Bubba shows up at the building.
You know what's amazing?
Jimmy shows up at the building. No Dennis.
I mean, if let's just imagine that everybody on Raw and SmackDown were not under contract, and they could do whatever they wanted. I could imagine on at least a monthly basis, somebody saying, I'll see you tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
And being out of there.
Yeah, for sure.
But, like, this was a hot promotion. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe it was because it was his second scaffold match. He was like, dude, I'm done. They're putting me back on that goddamn scaffold again. I'm out of here. But that was it. He just vanished.
Brad Armstrong beat Vernon Deaton with a leg sweep. Nothing more?
Nope. I wrote Brad wins.
Paul Jones and his crew came out for a promo. It's Raging Bull and Rick Rude. And you have two names for this team. The double R's for Raging and Rude. Or even better, the Awesome Twosome. Which almost rhymes.
Wow.
So Raging Bull says, I heard the Rock and Roll Express I hear sounded like the Blues Brothers crying about all their injuries. You guys keep singing the blues. Me and Rick Rude, we're bringing heavy metal. And Rude says part of being a great athlete is dealing with injuries. And if the Rock and Rollers were crying about their injuries, that's just proof they are good athletes and not great. Paul Jones, who has a hat pulled down low on top of his ears.
Oh my God, this guy. Paul Jones, he's got his mustache. His face is shaved except for his mustache, which is a little wider than a Hitler mustache, but it's just like a grotesque mustache. But he's got this hat. And I can't call it a cowboy hat, but if you imagine like a 19th century banker, that's the kind of hat he's wearing here.
Almost Mexican style, like Zorro?
Kinda, but not really. It's more like a banker.
Right.
And he's got this jacket on, this sweet jacket. It's kind of like a tuxedo, but it's got more sequins on it. This is more like a Mexican jacket. and he's got this awesome red frilly shirt on.
Yes.
And I'm like, this dude looks so awesome. Paul Jones, of all people. What an outfit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
God, he was great.
So he promised his men would get a title shot against the Rock and Rolls. Hey, there's a hell of a manager here. He set a goal and got it done within the end of the show. The Road Warriors cut a promo. They vowed to win the scaffold match in Cleveland tonight. They also hyped up scaffold matches and bunkhouse stampedes and even six-man tags with Dusty Rhodes. Arn Anderson defeated Alan Martin with the Spinebuster and Gourdbuster. The Superpowers cut a promo.
Dusty's in a giant fur coat.
Let's go over this slowly.
How many polar bears do you think took to make this coat?
They are endangered. Now you know why. Dusty Rhodes is a 300-pound, bless his soul, fat man. He's got a T-shirt pulled snug over his tits. He's got big, dark sunglasses on and a cowboy hat and the most amazing full-length white fur coat you've ever seen.
Literally, the only skin you can see on Dusty is like 4 chins.
His nose, his mouth, and his chins. Next to him is Nikita Koloff, who has a much better physique and therefore ain't wearing no shirt. Just an amazing duo, these two.
So Dusty's wearing this polar bear. Like he's just obscured from head to toe, but you can still tell that he's absolutely enormous under this outfit. And I believe the entire point of his promo was that Ric Flair likes to think that he's got money and women, but his women are all ugly because he picks them up at 3 a.m. But Dusty finds all the hot ladies around 9 p.m.
That is exactly what he said.
I was like, what? What?
Nikita then said he had been in Flair's figure 4 and he had not submitted. So he knew he could take Flair's best shot, but he also knew he could finish Flair off with just one Russian sickle. Paul Jones returned, and he challenged the Rock and Roll Express to a tag team title match on this very show. Midnight Express defeated Art Pritz and Dave Spearman with the rocket launcher.
This actually may have been where Condrey decided, I'm out of here. They're doing this match, and Dennis Condrey literally has to grab a jobber and move him into the right spot to take the rocket launcher. Because this jobber could not figure out where he should be to take a rocket launcher. That's the bottom of the barrel right there.
The middle of the ring was apparently too much of a concept to grasp.
In the middle of the ring, you idiot.
Ric Flair comes out for a promo. He is appalled that as the world champion and the greatest wrestler in the world, he is being forced to wrestle in these violent bunkhouse stampede matches. He calls out David Crockett, says, give a message to your brother. I will defend this title on your shows, or I will not work for you. And the Horsemen all came out, said, we dictate the rules in the World Championship and the TV title too, and they all laughed and left.
I got to talk about the most important part of this promo. Ric Flair says, and I am begging all these numbskulls in WWE to watch this promo so you can figure this out. And by numbskulls, I mean just one, the guy in charge. Ric Flair says that he looks great, but he's not the champion because he looks great. He's the champion because he looks great, but then he takes off his clothes and he beats people's asses. This is a very, very important key. Ric Flair looks good on top of being the best wrestler. All of these promos about how a person can't be the champion because they won't look good on a poster. I mean, great. If you're in a booking meeting, tell that to your buddies. But why would you ever say that on television? It's so stupid. I couldn't believe my eyes when I heard this promo. It's like Ric Flair 30 years ago. It's crazy. It's the same thing I talk about every single week, and here was Ric Flair doing a promo, basically doing it the way it should be done. The champion should dress great. The champion should look good. But if he's good enough, he could look like Dusty Rhodes and be the champion. Because it's about who can win.
Yeah.
And the other thing, once he gets all the business out of the way, it's time to talk about the ladies. And he starts talking about the ladies. Tully and Arn show up. All the chicks are screaming like crazy. They're just bombastic and charismatic. And I was watching this and just thinking, it's so obvious watching this right now why people who were watching this in 1986 loved pro wrestling.
Yeah.
And it's equally baffling when you watch Raw today and you see the backstage interviews. And now I try and figure out, why do people like this?
I gave up on that question years ago, but yes. Yeah. Barry Windham appeared on this show wrestling Randy Barber. I wrote this was Wyndham's debut, and then they immediately began to talk about how he was back. So apparently he had been on the Championship Wrestling show earlier than what is available on the network.
Randy's hideous.
This match went 30 seconds. Barry won with the lariat and the bulldog.
Well, he did a bulldog, and he kind of botched it. And so David Crockett says, "It drove the man's head into his knee."
Yeah, it was short, not very good. But the between this and the promo later, they made it clear this is not a new face to the fans of World Championship Wrestling. The Rock and Roll Express and Jim Crockett and Paul Jones all came out for a promo. Crockett explained he had gone through the proper channels. He had spoken to Paul Jones, and he had a contract there that had Raging Bull and Rick Rude's names on it. All it needed was the Rock and Roll Express's signatures, but they did not have to sign. They were under no obligation to defend their titles here. Rock and Roll Express, of course, were having none of that. They signed right away. All they asked was to get enough time to put their gear on. Crockett said, "That's just fine. Go get dressed. We'll do this match in about 10 minutes.
This was almost babyfaces being too stupid. But the difference was, even though they were injured, they weren't badly hurt. And they were going into a difficult position, but not an impossible position. They were fighting babyfaces. They felt it was going to be a fair 2-on-2 fight, and so they were down for it, because they're the champs.
They would defend their titles against all comers. Barry Windham cut a promo. He said he was very excited about everything and everyone in the territory and started rattling off names he couldn't wait to team with, names he couldn't wait to fight. Then he mentioned Terry Allen, who he clarified was in fact Magnum TA, promised he'd be back better than ever before. That turned out not to be true. And he cannot wait to watch this tag title match tonight.
Yeah, he said the Rock and Rolls had, and I quote, "the biggest match ever coming up tonight."
In front of 80 people.
Oh, the biggest match ever. That means of all time.
It does. Anywhere.
Wow. I don't know if this was.
Probably was.
I'll ask Dave tomorrow.
That's true. Dave would know. Ivan Koloff and Crusher Khrushchev versus the Mulkeys.
Randy Mulkey aged 100 years since the last show that I saw him on. He looked ancient.
And no better or no worse. Russians beat them up for a while and won with the sickle. The Rock and Roll Express versus Raging Bull and Rick Rude for the World Tag Team titles.
This was David Crockett at his absolute best.
I don't want to disparage the Rock and Roll Express or Raging Bull or Rick Rude. Fine pro wrestlers all. Tremendous wrestlers. The star of this was David Crockett. This was a long fucking match. At least a half hour.
That was like, it was probably 35 minutes of the time that we saw.
Yeah.
But if you add in the commercials,
Yes.
it was probably close to a full hour on television.
Probably.
It was a little less than an hour.
Many commercial breaks. 4,
Yes.
5, maybe 6. Now, it never dragged, because these guys were great and knew what they were doing. But that's a long time to be watching anything. And there's only so many hammerlocks you can see before you as a fan might say, wonder who's winning the football game, or something along those lines. But David Crockett would not let you turn the channel. He was hanging on every moment. And this is where it really hit me, compared to the numbskulls on Raw, who sound bored and can't wait for the show to go over and go home. David Crockett was living and dying by every momentum change in this match.
You don't say.
I'm not sure which one were his best lines.
Well, before we get into his lines, I'm going to give the David Crockett criticism first. And there's very little of it.
I will not stand for this.
I will tell you a little bit. Here's my only criticism. He was at a 100 the whole time.
Yes.
He didn't start at 50 and build his way up to 100. We were a minute into the match, and he was losing his mind over an arm bar. And then he kept going at the same pace for an hour.
Okay, I'm going to defend him here.
It would have been a little better to just kind of ramp it up a little bit.
Your point about how there should be peaks and valleys is valid. The opening of this match may have been the best part, because the rock and rolls were so great about always being 2 steps ahead of the heels. Not that the heels were incompetent, because every once in a while the heels would do a leapfrog in the corner to avoid a charge, or they'd duck a move, and they'd be showing fight and showing they were competent men. But every time they did, the rock and rolls would just counter their counter and take back over anyway, and send them clunking into each other like fools. And it was glorious.
Now, the most glorious part of David's commentary was not even a line. I'll let you go over some of his best lines in a moment, but... So as noted, David does not like going to commercials.
No.
David does not like having to cut away from the action. So they're getting the heat on Robert. And Robert finally backdrops Rick Rude, and he gives Ricky the hot tag. And Crockett is losing his mind that this man has got the hot tag. And Ricky is running wild, and he's just screaming, and he's yelling. He's having more fun than all of the fans in the building put together. He's just going crazy. And finally they cut off Ricky, and they start to go to work on him. And so Tony decides, well, they cut the guy off, the action slowing down. Now's the time to go to the commercial break. And so he starts to go to the commercial break. But David, at this point, no longer is trying to stop him. David is so into the match that he completely ignores Tony Schiavone, and literally they go to commercial as he is still ranting like a freight train on his commentary.
Absolutely.
And then we go to a commercial break. We come back from the commercial break, and the heels are working over Ricky's arm. Now, I screwed up the story a little bit, because Ricky was still running wild when we went to commercial. When we come back from the commercial, they're working over his arm. And David says they still have Ricky's arm. Because in David's mind, he's so into the match, it's like the commercial never even happened. And all of the fans watching at home were actually in the building watching the match with him. That is a level of excitement for a match that I don't think I've ever seen in all my life from a commentator. It was like the rest of the world didn't even exist to this man.
No.
He was in his own universe calling this match. Tony didn't exist. The fans didn't exist. The camera didn't exist. His commercial break totally didn't exist. And he just barreled on through.
So I didn't write down actually very many examples of what he said, but my 2 favorites were, one happened more than one time. We had a long heat segment on Robert. Actually, I should preface this. The whole time, the first 5 to 10 minutes when the rock and roll is just kicking all kinds of ass, Crockett he's happy, but he also knows at any minute they could target Ricky's bad arm, and then it's doom. So they ended up cutting off Robert first and working over his leg for a long time. And Ricky gets his comeback, and he's in there running wild, but about 20 seconds in, sure enough, Raging Bull just grabs that bad arm and wails away on it, and boom, heat established again for another 20 minutes. So as they're working on both guys, actually, occasionally they would, after selling a long hold for 3 to 4 minutes, they would fight their way free and crawl to the corner for the tag, but in their delirium, it would be the wrong corner. You could hear David Crockett screaming to them, "Wrong way! Wrong way!" And then best of all, when they have been destroying poor Ricky Morton's arm for 5 minutes, Ricky has explained to the camera and to his partner Robert, "I can't feel my arm. I can't feel my arm at all." He fights his way free. He throws off a half a dozen rapid punches with his good arm. The heel retreats to the corner. Ricky charges in, and the heel dodges, and Ricky goes bad arm into the turnbuckle. And David Crockett screams, "Oh no!" Can't take it. Just can't take it. So
the spot was even better because Right before it happened, Paul Jones goes over to the commentary booth, and he says, "You guys better not go to commercial, because Ricky's going to give up at any time." And Crockett, with utter disdain in his voice, says, "He'll never give up." Paul Jones walks away, and right as he's muttering this, Ricky does the giant dive and the heel moves, and he whacks his shoulder in the corner and falls down, and David's just devastated. Like I was about to prove Paul Jones wrong, and damn it.
So finally we got the hot tag to Robert. He ran wild with backdrops and drop kicks and sleepers like a good old school tag team babyface.
Before he got the tag, as Ricky is crawling to the corner, David is begging. He is pleading. He is begging God to just please let this man tag. And he did.
He did. So we get the backdrops and the drop kicks and the sleepers, and it quickly breaks down into a four-way. Robert hits an O'Connor roll, but the ref has his back turned, putting Ricky out of the ring. So he misses that Robert has the man's shoulders pinned for a 3 count. And then Rude clotheslines Robert, bails out of the ring. Raging Bull pulls himself on top, grabs a handful of tights, and the ref counts 3, and we got us some new champs.
The only thing this was missing was for David Crockett to quietly turn to Tony and say, "Tony, I'll see you tomorrow." And then we'd never see him again. Just quit the territory.
So they had a grand celebration with their new shiny tag team belts. Goes to commercial. They come back. The champs have joined the announcers. They replay the finish. We'll have several highlights of the match. But most of the finish, where David Crockett is adamant that not only did the referee miss this pin, but Rick Rude was not the legal man when he hit Robert at the finish. Champs, of course, don't care about this. They're smiling, they're jolly, they're exhausted, but they're happy. They say, it doesn't matter how it got done. The point is it got done. We are the tag team champions. We're so happy. We hope all you fans at home are happy. We wish you all a Merry Christmas. And in this melee, I suspect this was an accident, but if you try to do it, it couldn't have been done any better. Raging Bull turns to his left really fast, and he bumps Paul Jones' hat. And Paul Jones's hat comes halfway off. And we see the sides of his head are shaved. And his eyes bug out, and he reaches up and he grabs his hat and he pulls it back down. It was such a perfect tease.
There were 2 great moments in addition to this. One is at the finish, when Paul Jones jumps in the ring to celebrate, his hat actually fell off.
Oh.
But it's from a long way away.
Yes.
And you see him quickly reach down and put the hat back on his head. But David is just flat out disgusted, and he has to recap the finish with the heels right there, and he's arguing with them, and he's yelling at him, and he's calling them cheaters, and they're having their big celebration, wishing everybody Merry Christmas, and then David's like, "We gotta go back to the video. We gotta show the fans how you guys cheated and won the belts." So David is already, he's just so mad. He can barely contain his anger. He's yelling at the heels. It's the worst day of his life. He throws it back so that the fans can once again see how the heels have cheated. And when they show the replay the last time, suddenly David notes, "You also pulled the trunks."
Yes.
And his brain explodes. You not only had the illegal man clothesline the guy and reverse the cradle, but you pulled the tights. He's never seen anything so diabolical in his whole life. I can't believe he came back.
So as the fans are chanting, "Take the belts away! Take the belts away!" Rick Rude explains, quote, "The rock and rolls can strut and stroll, but the awesome twosome is just too gruesome."
He was so great. God, Rick Rude was great.
He was the man. And that was it.
This show
was a hell of a show
was
right
awesome. This show was so
Both these shows
awesome.
actually in different ways.
Yeah, this one was way better.
Well, it was.
God, everybody should watch this show. Like, if you're listening to this and you're just so sick of Raw, or you know what? If you love SmackDown, you should watch this show.
Yeah.
It's kind of just like SmackDown, but better.
Way better. I assume. I have only watched like 3 SmackDowns this year.
This was better than SmackDown.
Yeah.
God, it was so good. Great interviews, great wrestling, great angles, great heels, great baby faces.
Characters, yes.
God, it was awesome.
And it's all hyping up the Stampede.
Oh, yeah,
That's
the
the
Stampede.
It's kind of a footnote after that tag title match, but the one thing that is so clear about this promotion, they promote, and once that event is done, promote the next one.
That's right.
Always looking forward.
You can say that the last one was the greatest of all time, but then you got to move on to the next one. It's amazing when I think that TLC is Sunday. It's like, Sunday? Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Well, we got one show. Good luck. I mean, they've been building up the matches, but it just seems too soon. Anyways, Paul Jones says, Merry Christmas, everybody.
That's right.
Yeah, we're going to wrap this up. It's only November 27th, but...
At the one and only. Woo!
Shall we begin?
Sure.
NWA Championship Wrestling, December 13th, 1986. The announcers announced that Barry Windham and Ron Garvin had defeated the Russians to win the U.S. Tag Team titles. This led to the Rock and Roll Express versus Brody Chase and Tony Zane. And Tony Zane is the first guy we're going to have to talk about tonight in what became a long parade of just amazing, breathtaking jobbers.
Do you realize how long we have been reviewing NWA World Championship Wrestling Saturday Night 605? We have been talking about these jobbers for years now. And you always think this has got to be the peak. Nobody could, coincidentally, out-peak Lee Peak.
Sure.
But you know what? Every single week. And this show, there were new jobbers.
Oh.
This was the Christmas gift that kept on giving the show. Can we talk about Tony Zane? Let's just start at the beginning.
I think we should.
They're announcing the match, and as the Rock and Roll Express is heading to the ring, Tony Zane, who is in the ring, turns and looks over the ropes at the camera.
Okay, you're already underselling this. He's standing there in his track jacket, athletic warm-up gear. He's flaring his fake lats. His face is totally blank, like a zombie. And he only moves at the waist. So when he looks to the left, he doesn't turn his head. He turns at the waist, and his arms are out to the sides because he's flaring his lats, and he spins that way, and then he spins back the other way, like a poorly made action figure.
He looked like a cross between Bobo from Finding Bigfoot and you, which is an amazing amalgamation there.
I don't even know.
And you know what? When this guy looked in the camera like such a creep, all I could think was, no wonder Vince banned this.
Well, yes, you should all aim to be higher than Tony Zane.
It can't get much lower.
So then he started to wrestle. I did write that he is both flabby and horrible, so we may be related. The Rock and Roll Express dabbled with him for 30 seconds or so.
Dude, this show is the best thing that ever happened in your career.
I have risen in your esteem.
God, I look back now and think, Vinny was amazing. To compare yourself to Tony Zane is... You need to see somebody about this lack of self-esteem.
See.
I mean, come on. Look at this fucking guy.
What is the opposite of delusions of grandeur?
He was so horrible.
Delusions of pity.
Delusions of Tony Zane.
They wrestled him for about 30 seconds and said, fuck this, tagged him out, never tagged him back in.
Yeah, think about that. They had to protect Tony Zane by beating Brody Chase.
So we would rather wrestle Brody Chase for 2 minutes. They wrestled him for 2 minutes. They pinned him with a double dropkick.
You know what's amazing about Tony Zane is how spectacularly he has regressed. This was not the first time we've seen him.
No.
We've seen him many times.
Dozens.
And this was his worst ever.
He stands out. On the list of great Tony Zane matches, this is in the low end. The Rock and Roll Express.
Please tell me the list of great Tony Zane
I don't
matches
know.
that I've been missing.
I don't know. Live radio, everyone. The Rock and Roll Express then cut a promo calling out the Awesome Twosome. They promised to get their titles back. Ricky Morton's bangs were in phenomenal form here.
Dude, you can add a hairy back to the list of Robert Gibson's weaknesses. It was so disgusting.
Oh, God.
Like, you can't get a rat to just shave that off. Really?
He was a busy man.
No. I've watched him.
I don't have an answer. Speaking of not having an answer, the Boogie Woogie Man came out for a promo, and he promised Tony The new boogeyman is back. How does that work?
I don't know.
Did the new boogeyman show up and leave? Are you just the new boogeyman now for the first time? He was happy to have new music. He told the little chillin' to be good, so Santa Claus would bring them something nice.
You know Uncle Pizza's down the road?
Sure do.
They have a Santa there. He was there last year, 2 years ago. And Whitney and I were getting pizza, and we saw Santa. And so Whitney sat on his lap for a photo, and he gave the hook 'em horns. This is the most awesome Santa
Like
ever.
metal?
Oh, yeah. So this year, we brought the baby in for the baby's first ever Santa picture. Baby wailed, as all babies do. So then today, we took the baby to Country Village because it was cookies with Mrs. Claus.
Oh.
Yeah. Mrs. Claus and her cookies. So we took the baby in thinking, well, she was afraid of Santa. Let's put her with Mrs. Claus. Maybe she'll take to this a little better. Nope. Wailed. Howling. Anyway, the Boogie Woogie Man here looking into the camera and giving the chillin', as he said, a message about being good for Christmas. I was like, this led to millions of nightmares around this country. He was the fucking most horrifying looking dude. And his Christmas message to the children came off like a threat. Like, if you're not good, I'm coming to get you.
He did promise that if he won one of the bunkhouses, he would give all $25,000 to the boys and girls.
Yeah, if he wins even one, he said.
Yeah.
Talk about a lack of confidence.
There's many out there to be won.
You and the boogeyman have something in common here.
It is exactly that.
That's the only thing.
That is the only thing. Went to break. They came back. The Superpowers got a promo. Nikita called out Paul Jones and the Awesome Twosome and the Russians and the Four Horsemen, Tully Blanchard in particular, Ric Flair in particular, promised Flair would lose the world title in Philadelphia tonight. And then it was Dusty's turn. Dusty Rhodes began to scream at me.
He's fatter every week.
He was screaming at me that he and Nikita and David Crockett had gotten funky like a monkey the night before. And they were going to get funky like a monkey again in Philadelphia.
Then he says, you know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
I have no idea what he's saying.
And also Chicago.
What in the hell was he talking about? They got funky like a monkey last night?
He said Ric Flair had never been funky like a monkey.
That's not true.
But he looked like a monkey. And he looked like a turkey. How can anyone say wrestling in the 80s wasn't great?
Well, I watched this and I thought, think of all those youngsters nowadays that go on YouTube and they watch the best of Dusty Rhodes promos, and he's like this larger-than-life legendary talker in their mind. They never watched this weekly stuff.
No.
This guy was, I guess you could describe him as the best delivery ever for just completely rambling, nonsensical promos.
Just bullshit.
He had nothing to say
Just
here.
hearing bullshit for 30 seconds. It was awesome.
And Nikita is like, Lana, just a male Russian. This fake accent.
Yeah.
Have you seen her on Total Divas? Did you see
Hell
the
no.
clip with her and Anvil?
No.
Oh man, it was all over. So Lana is, I guess, in Calgary with Jim Neidhart. She's at Natty's house.
I was going to say, Anvil got confused and thought she was his daughter.
And the storyline is, first off, Lana speaks in her real voice,
Perfect.
which she claims.
That's just wonderful.
She claims it's an American accent that she's putting on for television.
Ah.
Yeah. But anyway, the storyline is Anvil takes her out to show her how to shot put. And so she goes out there and she spins around and throws it, and it goes right through his windshield. It's like the fakest thing. You watch it and you realize this is why they're down to 500,000 viewers. This is completely ridiculous. And she's wearing almost nothing. It's still not enough. But yeah, I thought about that when I saw Nikita.
Andersons versus Randy Mulkey and Mike Simani. About a year and a half ago, I tweeted out a picture of Dennis Condrey working over a jobber saying, this guy's the biggest jobber I ever saw. And every time I see Mike Simani, I think, hey, that's that guy I tweeted about. Then I have to go look it up, and that guy was named Mark Cooper. So not the same person.
Oh, man, I remember Mark Crook. He was bad.
He was real bad.
But this is a different kind of bad.
Mike Simani was just out there being terrible.
I was trying to eat, and I almost couldn't.
He was too gross.
He's so disgusting.
He was balding and pale and hairy and skinny. And Ole's beating him up for a while. Actually, you probably want to point out is they get the Mulkey in there finally. The Mulkey, who, as you noted, looked like Ric Flair compared to Mike Simani. And they've got the Mulkey down, and Ole's got him down. He's leaning on the ropes, and he puts like a knee in his throat. And then he just stands on the man's face for a 5 count. And then he stands off the man's face. Then he tags in Arn. Now, here's the best part. He wasn't just standing on Randy Mulkey's face to be a dick. Because he tagged in Arn, and Arn immediately hit a gourd buster for the win. So you see, Ole was in fact working over the face.
Sure.
It was psychology.
This Mulkey was totally horrible, but he bleached his hair.
Yeah.
You know what that means?
He's trying.
It was a conscious effort to try.
Yes.
I saw none of this in Mike Simani.
Oh, no.
He was as hideous as they come. If only Granny could see Mike Simani.
Oh, we got to get her to watch one of these.
She buried James Ellsworth.
This exact episode we have to get her to watch. J.J. Dillon and Tully Blanchard cut a promo. It is the Christmas season, so Dillon's out there in this Christmas green blazer. He runs down Nikita for a while, and Tully says to be a horseman, or excuse me, being a horseman and being a champion makes you great. They honestly didn't have much to say.
They didn't need to say anything because they had a match.
They had a Mulkey.
Bill Mulkey.
Bill Mulkey.
This was a Mulkey that appeared near death.
I'm remembering this now. This is the best match I ever saw in my life.
This was unbelievable. Let me at least just talk about the first part. So they're in the ring together. This Mulkey looks like he's got hours left to live. And Tully... I should laugh. But he just seriously looks so corpse-like.
Yeah. The only question would it be illness or would he take his own life? Would he escape?
Jesus. Let's just cut to the chase. Tully offers a handshake. So Mulkey goes to shake his hand. And Tully responds by slapping him across the face. Now, normally you would think, well, now Tully will just take over and beat this man. Wrong. Tully slaps the Mulkey, and the Mulkey gets all fired up. And the Mulkey is all uppity and stalking Tully Blanchard, and he's angrily throwing these horrible punches. And Blanchard is backing up, and he's bobbing and weaving.
He's playing Apollo Creed.
He's made this Mulkey mad.
Yeah.
And literally, the Mulkey chases him around the ring, and finally Tully backs up into a corner, so now he's trapped. He's trapped by the Mulkey. And his response to being trapped is he grabs him, knees him in the gut, and beats the shit out of him.
Yeah.
That was the first spot.
That was the first thing they did. Now, maybe it doesn't matter. I saw things a little differently. I saw this as the Mulkey offering a handshake, and Tully's saying, all right, shaking his hand, and at the same time slapping him with his other hand.
I see.
Maybe it doesn't matter. That's how
it doesn't matter.
Then we had the spot, as you described, with Tully bobbing and weaving, and
this is what matters.
Bill Mulkey doing the worst, furious... and you have to call this a comeback. It's a comeback from one slap, but it's a comeback. But it was the worst comeback of all time.
It wasn't even a comeback. It was
a flurry of offense. He just threw 24 of the worst strikes you ever saw, none of which would have hit their target anyway, but Tully was also ducking and dodging to make him look even worse.
I just watched this Mulkey's fired up behavior, and I thought, you would never win any fight.
No.
Against anyone.
Any fan.
Ever.
No.
Vinny would beat your ass. There's nobody. I can't think of one person on the earth that the Mulkey could beat when I watched him here.
So, then, as you noted, they go to the corner. Tully cuts him off for a bit. About a minute later...
He couldn't beat Mike Simani.
No. About a minute later, Tully actually gave him some offense. I said, I will take some shots from this man. So Bill Mulkey, given a chance to throw 4 to 6 strikes, decided to go all Superman punch all the time. Superman punch to the face, Superman punch to the face, Superman punch to the belly, Superman punch to the face. Tully absorbed these. I can't see he sold them, but he allowed them to hit, and then he put a stop to it quickly, beat him up for a while.
It was the same thing. It was, he took a shot, he took a shot, he took a shot, he took a shot, and then he kneed him in the gut and just beat his ass again.
Yes. So as he's beating him up for a while, we have the crowd chanting such heinous things as, JJ's a wimp. And go home, JJ. I miss the 1980s so much. Okay, here's the finish. This is a thing of beauty. The Mulkey's dead. Tully's dropping elbows on him. He drops an elbow. And he stands up and he drops a second elbow. Until he gets up and he hesitates and he goes to drop a third elbow and the Mulkey dodges. So Tully misses the elbow. This only serves to fire Tully up. He's pissed at himself now. He jumps up, he makes his comeback, and hits a slingshot suplex and wins. 4.25 stars!
Tully needs to go in the Hall of Fame for this performance.
This is so wonderful.
It was awesome.
We saw the clips of Garvin and Wyndham winning the U.S. tag belts. So the Russians used a chain on Garvin behind the ref's back, but when they went to hit Barry with the chain, he avoided it, hit a sunset flip for the win. Tim Horner versus Vernon Deaton.
I'd like to add that Tim Horner's nickname is White Lightning.
More like
White Lightning?
More like white paint drying. It kind of rhymes.
This is so bad.
We had somebody chanting, "Come on, Timothy."
Timothy Horner.
Yeah.
White Lightning.
He showed a young lady in the crowd, identified her as Dolores Wadsworth. When they read her name, she did an epic facepalm when she realized she was on camera, because some things never change.
David Crockett's there talking about the holiday season, because it is December of 1986. He gives this speech about the United States. I actually thought he might cry. A very sensitive babyface patriot, this.
That's right.
David Crockett. And then what really made me sad was he's so busy talking about the country and whatever else he's rambling about that White Lightning puts a sugar hold on Vernon Deaton, and David Crockett doesn't even notice. I was so angry. It's like he missed the Rock and Roll's double drop kick.
So, we had a Terra Stories graphic on the screen here that just let us know other places Tim Horner had worked. So he's doing arm bars and arm drags,
White Lightning,
and hammer locks. I was not aware David Crockett was capable of being bored, but David Crockett was bored here. And he does his Patriot speech about wishing well to all those troops around the world on this holiday. And he talks about how dangerous these arm bars and arm drags are. And then there's a pause. And he explains calmly, with little emotion, you know, Tim is a quick, fast wrestler. But he is also a cautious wrestler. That is the nicest way to call someone boring I've ever heard.
You know, you got to be really cautious when you're in the ring there with Vernon Deaton.
Can't afford to make a mistake. Eventually, Horner won with a bridging O'Connor roll. This was the longest 3 minutes of my life. Ric Flair then came out in a fur coat for a promo.
What was he wearing?
That's as far as I got.
It's rare that I see something about Ric Flair that I'm taken aback by. But this black fur coat was one of those things.
There are some women watching him from the crowd with what I can only describe as hungry eyes.
Well, hey, they're in. It's their lucky day.
Yeah,
because Ric Flair
that feeds into this. Yes,
he did a 1986 version of a booty call.
Basically, when
you
are Ric Flair,
I want all 18 to 27-year-olds to the top of the hotel in Chicago for what he described as a potluck and smorgasbord.
The Hyatt Regency. He named the hotel.
Oh.
Presumably there'd be someone there checking the women who showed up to make sure they met Flair's requirements.
Yes.
He also said that Nikita and the Road Warriors, as one of his girlfriends pointed out, usually guys who have big arms and big chests and big necks, they're small everywhere else. You know what he meant.
All I know is only Ric Flair could get away with making fun of the Road Warriors and Nikita Koloff for being too muscular.
Yeah.
You guys have too good a bodies. You're way too big and strong. That's your weakness.
Exactly. Jim Cornette came out for a promo, his first appearance since falling off the scaffold. He said he'd been thinking all about the Road Warriors and Paul Ellering day and night as they put the breathing mask on him in the hospital. He did his rehab. Every time he took a step and a shot of pain shot up his leg, he thought about the Road Warriors and Paul Ellering. Says one of these days we're going to get you guys up on a scaffold and throw you guys off. If we don't get you there, they're doing these bunk houses all over the place. People are getting hurt left and right, he notes, and you guys are going to be next. And he brings out the Midnight Express. It was the Midnight Express versus Rocky King and George South. Things you will see when watching 1980s wrestling that would not fly in 2016. Bobby Eaton was so disgusted to be wrestling a black man.
Oh, this.
And every time they...
Can I praise Bobby Eaton before we talk about this?
Sure.
Because I don't want to praise him afterwards.
All right.
Bobby Eaton was such a great wrestler. I realize this is not breaking news, but this guy was every bit as good as Shawn Michaels.
Pretty much.
In fact, when you watch Bobby Eaton, this is what Shawn Michaels became. Like, Bobby Eaton came first, and then this young fella named Shawn Michaels must have been watching just Bobby Eaton tape after Bobby Eaton tape, because they moved exactly the same. And obviously, Shawn Michaels was in better shape, and he did far more extraordinary things. Actually, I can't even say if he took bigger bumps. It was different.
Different bumps.
Yeah. He was obviously a different promo and different character and that sort of thing, but as far as just like the way they moved and the way they worked is extraordinarily similar. Mm-hmm. And nobody works and moves like this nowadays.
No.
They just don't.
No.
God, he was so good. But then...
Well, it was actually first. He made, what he did was he locked up with Rocky King, and the ref separated them, and then Eaton looked at his hands in disgust and wiped them on the mat. And he locked
Can
up
you imagine?
one more time, and Eaton again looked at his hands like he was wiping his fingers on the ropes. Yeah, this happened. Now, I will say that, I don't know if you can say this in defense. He did this stupid quote-unquote joke at the beginning, then dropped it, and they just did a wrestling match after that.
Yes. I thought it was a good match. It did go a long time.
It went very long for a squash, through a commercial, then several minutes afterwards. Cornette noted that King and South had actually been on a successful tour of Central States, beating people up, but here's my guys beating them up. The best part is, they get the heat on King for a while, and they build up to what would be in a normal match a hot tag. And George South gets the hot tag, and he runs in, and 5 seconds later, they are pinning him after hitting a demolition decapitation. And there you go. And then Cornette cut another promo, said basically the same stuff. His men were going to get revenge for him.
Condrey was so ugly. It's just the best. Every week I look at him and I'm more impressed with how ugly he is. He's a great heel.
So they go to break, they come back, and here's the Road Warriors. The guys, the Midnight Express, has just been threatening to beat up for like 15 minutes straight because Cornette was doing commentary while the Express were wrestling. And the Road Warriors come out to wrestle Clement Fields and Kent Glover. And they kill these fuckers and hit a standing clothesline and win in 20 seconds. Not a running clothesline out of the corner like a sickle or a short arm clothesline like the Rainmaker. Nope. Hawk just picks a guy up, clotheslines him, pins him.
Yeah.
Done.
What I didn't like in this match was Animal almost killed Clement Fields with a power slam. It's one of those moves where when you're going to power slam a guy, it's like you pick him up and you turn him over and you deposit him on the mat and then you cover him. Animal did half the move. He picked him up and he started rotating, and then he just stopped doing the move. And the guy just went ass over tea kettle, landed nearly on his head and almost died. I hate those moves where guys start a move, but then stop halfway through and the other guy's responsible for not dying.
And they cut a promo about beating people up in Philadelphia and their hometown of Chicago.
Hawk threatened to run over people that were walking on the sidewalk, and everybody cheered.
Yeah, he said, I'm so excited to get here today, I nearly hit 5 people in my car, but if you don't like the way I drive, stay off the sidewalk. And everyone went, yay! Paul Jones and the Awesome Twosome came out for a promo.
This is my favorite team of all time this week.
It is amazing.
And Paul Jones, everything that we said about Paul Jones and his outfit the last time, it was the same outfit, except instead of a red frilly shirt, he had a white frilly shirt. But he had his top hat gimmick on and his black suit, and he just looked so awesome. And Rick Rude's out there being a badass, Raging Bull's cutting an awesome promo. And I'm just like, a year ago, Paul Jones was like a clown. Now, he's a badass with a badass crew that are the champions, and it's the best act ever.
Paul Jones is still losing his never-ending war to find the right camera to look at. Rude speaks for a while. He calls out the rock and rolls and says, we've got your belts now. And he calls the Road Warriors, we're not scared of you. And they call out the superpowers. And Manny pretended he didn't know Nikita Koloff's name and called him Chiquita Banana. Called it Garvin and Wyndham. And then Manny goes off and he's just on a roll. He's running his mouth, running at every team, this and that. And there's a point where Rude thinks he's about to stop, so you can see Rude take a breath to drop one more line, but Manny just barrels on through. So Rude stops and releases the breath. And Manny's going and going, and finally Rude looks at him like, is this guy ever going to wrap it up? And Manny finally just stops, and they're done, and they leave. Barry Windham versus Larry Stevens.
If you go back and watch this show, Larry Stevens, in the 30-something years that I've been watching pro wrestling, he had the worst headlock I've ever seen. Am I wrong?
It was a bad headlock.
It's like he thought the guy was wearing a giant helmet. I don't even think he made contact with the guy's head. He, built Saturn's rings around the guy's head. Mm-hmm. And the guy had to struggle to not fall out of this headlock.
They wouldn't have had to pretend he couldn't escape.
Jesus, this was so horrible.
They were listing some of the bunkhouse winners, including Big Bubba, Barry Windham, and Dusty Rhodes. I didn't even write down the finish. I am assuming Windham won with a lariat.
I think so.
Did you write it down either?
I was busy marveling at the headlock that I witnessed in this match.
All right, here we go.
All right, allow me. Randy Barber and Pat O'Brien, which I just realized he has Bryan in his name, against Rick Rude and Manny Fernandez. Pat O'Brien, at this point in the show, and he may have been trumped later, I can't remember. I'll get into it in my notes, but he was the worst jobber I've ever seen. I'll let you describe his look. But let's talk about the fact that this man could not hit the ropes. He could not bump. He could not do anything. But he put a lot of work into his look. At one point...
Are you sure?
Yeah!
Go ahead.
Well, he had a Misawa green and white tights with clover leaves on them.
He ripped off Misawa's gear.
Because he's Irish.
Okay, fine.
He had brown hair, a brown mustache, but a white beard.
So you're implying he dyed his beard white?
No, I don't know. I think he just dyed the rest of it brown.
That's possible.
But left the beard part white.
Yeah.
Why? I have no idea. Maybe it's an Irish thing.
See, I'm thinking that's just what he looked like. Only that part of his beard had gone white, and so he grew it out.
He took a tackle at one point and sold it, not by bumping, but by spinning around in a full 360 and then sitting on his ass. Am I exaggerating?
No.
He got thrown out of the ring, and our main man, Paul Jones, went over and kicked him in the head. And I looked at it, and I thought, Paul Jones is he's the coolest man I've ever seen next to this Pat O'Brien. He looked like Rick Rude next to this guy. And speaking of Rude finally has had enough of this fucker, and he kicked him right in the face and busted his nose, and Pat O'Brien is bleeding everywhere. And I don't like to see guys get hurt. I don't like to see dudes kicking other dudes in the face. But you could just see watching this match that Manny Fernandez and Rick Rude were like, what in the fuck is this guy? This Pat O'Brien. Was he not the worst?
So we talked about his gear, we talked about his beard and his hair and whether it may or may not have been natural. He was, of course, also short and fat and pale. At one point, I said he looked to be in his mid-40s, and you said he's at least 10 years older than that.
We're almost in our mid-40s.
Yeah, he's way older than us.
We don't look like this guy.
No, you're right. He was at least in his 50s. At the same time, if you told me this is the first time he was ever in a professional wrestling ring, I would absolutely believe you. He looked like he'd never done any of this before. There was a point when Rude and Fernandez went to like double whip him into the ropes, and it was like he didn't want to go, and finally they just said, run, fucker, and they pulled him as hard as they could. He screamed in terror, hit the ropes like with his chest, and then turned and came back at them so they could hit him. I think that was the point where Rude said, fuck this. I have a responsibility to everyone in the back to make sure this guy never gets into a ring again. And then the snuff film started, and they tortured him for a while. What else? From the very beginning, by the way, reasons to love Rick Rude and Manny Fernandez. When Rick Rude came out at this time in real life, he was using Sade's Smooth Operator as his song. And they obviously are not airing that on WWE Network. But the generic sleazy ripoff they have may be even better.
Oh, it's better.
It's awesome. It's so
amazing.
Great. So they're out there. You mentioned when they had tried to throw him through the ropes, you undersold what a Herculean task this was.
They almost had to take off the bottom rope to get him out of there.
They just go to throw him out of the ring. Everyone, I was a horrible wrestler. I could get thrown out of the ring and not kill myself and not hurt anything and have it look okay. Pat O'Brien just goes diving. There's really three. You could go. There's four options you have. You can go over the top rope. You can go between the top and middle. You can go between the middle and bottom, or you can just hit the mat and roll that under the ring. Any of these will be fine in the long run. Pat O'Brien doesn't know what to do, and they throw him, and they let go, and he goes flying directly into the bottom rope like he was aiming for it, and he goes to the mat and just collapses. And they just kind of push him down with their feet and push him out of the ring.
This dude's bleeding everywhere.
I think it was the boot that broke his nose, although Rude followed up on that by rubbing his face in the mat repeatedly.
There's blood on the mat. There's blood on his chest. There's blood everywhere.
Yeah.
David is begging for them to pin this guy. And so Manny goes for the flying burrito, and Manny throws this guy into the ropes, and he runs at him, and he just leaps into the air, full force, and he just body checks this guy.
Yes.
So hard that Manny Fernandez spins in almost a full circle, and he hits the mat, and he comes up, and his chest is just covered with blood because he body checked this guy right in the bloody face.
Yeah. And then at last they pinned him. This was amazing.
Oh my God.
This was something else.
God, this is one of those matches where you think it's got to be real.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe the rest of it's fake, but this one's real.
I assure you.
They found
by
a
the
guy.
end of that was real.
They beat the shit out of him.
So Wyndham then comes out to cut a promo on the champs, saying there's no call for what he has just seen in the ring.
He's upset at Manny's lack of sportsmanship.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
He hopes someday he gets a chance to try out the world champs for himself, and he also cut out Ric Flair because the world title is his ultimate goal. Jim Garvin and Precious come out.
So
Jim
awesome.
Garvin talking is the best. Jim Garvin wrestling.
Well, yeah, because his wrestling sucks.
Jim Garvin wrestling is not the best, but his talking is so great. First, he says he's been looking all over the building, looking in all the hallways and the offices, looked in the parking lot and the back lot. I can't find any Armstrongs. I can't find Bullet Bob. I can't find Brad Armstrong. You know, if someone hit my dad with a garbage can, I'd be eager to fight. These Armstrongs, they're cowards. You can't find them anywhere. And I want to talk about Dusty Rhodes. Dusty Rhodes comes out here chewing gum on television. If I was Ted Turner, I'd slap that gum out of his mouth myself. You can't come on TV chewing gum. And as for you, Barry Windham, who are you to tell Rick Rude and Manny Fernandez how to wrestle their matches? You stay out of their nose, or you keep your nose out of the business. He stops, and he turns to Precious, who's his real-life wife. They make out for a minute. He stops and says, I'm going to go get a cardiovascular workout right now. And I was hoping they would just leave. But no, they had a match. It was Jimmy Garvin versus Art Pritz.
Jimmy Garvin's got these new tighty-whities. Are these new?
No, he's been wrestling these for a while.
It must be, you know what it was? It was because he came out, he had his tighty-whities, but he had like...
He had the sequined jacket and like booty shorts.
They were booty shorts.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the fuck?
And frankly, even though they covered more skin, it would have been far worse to see him wrestling in those.
They were grotesque.
Yes.
And then Precious starts taking them off.
Oh, yeah.
And he's got tighty-whities. And his legs are skinny. And he's got that weird body type. This just should have been outlawed. It's hideous.
So Art Pritz took the very worst guillotine drop on the ropes I've ever seen. And it went on too long, and Garvin hit his brainbuster and won. The Andersons cut a promo. Ole says, we should be champions, not Rude and Fernandez, but the problem is Jim Crockett's protecting them by putting so many teams between the two of us. He said he had promised Dusty Rhodes would not survive 1986. He realized 86 was almost done, but he wouldn't survive 87. He wasn't leaving until Dusty was done. Threatened Ron Garvin and Barry Windham. And then Arn notes the talent in this company is so high, any team could lose on any night, and that includes you, Fernandez and Rude, and also includes you, Windham and Garvin. He says, I've fought Ronnie Garvin many times. I have great respect for that man, but we're going to take you out. And he also called out the superpowers. Jimmy Valiant versus Bill Tab.
Before this, actually, they're going to the break, and we get the famous, let's face it, the best is right here. And on the screen is Jimmy Garvin.
Yeah, the best. The best in the world. So, Jimmy Valiant versus Bill Tab. We did not get an entrance for Jimmy, so whatever his new music was, it must have been impossible to edit out and put in new songs. They just cut it entirely. He also had dollar signs all over his gear, because apparently he has sold out. And strangest of all, as you noted, it appeared he had put a brick in the middle of his back and then gone into the tanning bed.
It was very weird.
Just a random pale triangle in the middle of his back, or rectangle.
Rectangle, yeah. I can imagine, like, Jimmy just, falling asleep outside on his belly in the sun.
Yeah.
And as a rib, someone just coming by and put a brick on his back.
It must have happened.
I'm sure that had to have happened. I can't think of another thing.
He did his horrible offense and won with the elbow. The Rock and Roll Express came back for another promo. At some point in the last hour, Ricky had his hair done, so his bangs weren't quite so obvious. They were upset at the Awesome Twosome for being bullies. And that was that. Our last match, the main event. Barbarian versus Robert Burrows.
This guy. I'd almost have to go back and watch again and find out if Robert Burrows was really, honestly, worse than Pat O'Brien. It's a tough call.
I think he had a worse look.
Oh, that's for sure.
He was a tall guy, but he looked like the weeniest history teacher you ever had in middle school.
He kind of looked like I don't know how to describe it. He doesn't really look like...
He had a mustache.
He had that horrible mustache from the 80s.
And that horrible 80s haircut.
Just a short haircut. Pale. The baby blue tights.
Baby blue tights over his so skinny fat body.
You know what? This guy was worse. Because not only did he look horrible, and he was a horrible worker, but he also was absolutely scared to death. And he did the same Pat O'Brien deal where he could not take a bump. He would get hit, and he would stand bolt upright, spin in a full circle like he was on a pedestal, and then sit on his ass and roll to his back. He was horrible.
Yeah. Pat O'Brien, it may have just been the match was longer, too.
I think part of the problem was I was busy looking at the giant television camera that looked like an ad outside.
What's the television
fucking
camera?
gigantic.
Bigger than your house.
It literally, like in Star Wars, those, what were the guns where they, like, come out of the top of the thing? Or they come out of the bottom of, like, the Millennium Falcon, there'd be, like, a gun or something like that?
A turret.
Yeah, a turret! There's a fucking giant turret there filming this show.
Look at Dalek. It's Doctor Who reference. Anyway, yeah. So, anyway, Barbarian killed Robert Burrows forever. It was not as spectacular or as funny as Pat O'Brien.
Hey, you want to know why? Because Barbarian was just tolerating this guy.
Yes.
Rick Rude was like, I'm going to kill you.
Mm-hmm.
You suck so bad I never want to see you again. Barbarian was just like, yeah, this guy's terrible. I'll just
like part of me
keep doing stuff.
Part of me should be angry that Rick Rude was so blatantly taking liberties here, but I just enjoyed it so much I can't. And if that makes me a bad person, then I am a bad person.
Well, with the Rick Rude match, you could almost defend it because, except for the kick right to the face breaking his nose, because the whole thing was always, you're going to hit the guy really hard in a safe place.
There was nothing else they did that was going to hurt him.
No.
They didn't drop it on his head.
No, they weren't trying to kill the guy or maim him, but he did boot him right in the face and break his nose. That was going a little too far. But God, that guy was so horrible in that match.
Anyway, Barbarian beat up Burrows, won with a headbutt. Horsemen came out for one last promo, all 5 of them.
It was literally a promo designed for them to tell you how awesome they were. Yeah. That's all it was.
Yes, as promos should be.
And then Flair sent out one more booty call.
Yeah. And the closest thing they had to a point was just for Arn to say, I have to admit, only myself feel a little naked here because you 2 horsemen have championship belts and we do not. But I assure you, one way or another, we're going to get some gold. And other than that, it was just Flair being crazy.
He should have said one way or the other, we're going to get some.
I guess so. Well, they were horsemen. They did.
Yeah.
That went without saying. The best part of this, as Flair is going crazy and screaming about Chicago and Philadelphia and Dusty Rhodes and the Road Warriors and all the women, the best part of it, and this is what wrestling needs back, is one heel, especially a heel, going crazy about what they're going to do, and another guy to stand next to him, hold his belt, smile, and go, ha 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 ha.
That's a great heel team.
It needs to come back.
Yeah. It never will.
I love this show.
Everybody has to hate each other nowadays.
The best show ever. Yes. Yes.
Even the heels who pretend like they're best friends, the gimmick is they secretly hate each other.
Exactly.
These guys, legit, they love each other. They share their women. They have booty calls and smorgasbords.
Absolutely.
What's happened to this business?
No friends anymore.
There are no friends anymore. It's too bad. So that's the show, everybody. Please go back. If you don't watch anything else, just go back and watch Pat O'Brien. And what's the other geek's name?
It don't matter.
It does matter. Robert Burrows in the match with the Barbarian.
I thought you meant the other geek in that match.
Just watch their jobber performance.
I need to bring up Pat O'Brien. There's one other thing I forgot about.
Can I say one thing before you get into this? I want you all to watch this because I remember when I was coming up in this business years ago, there was always the whole thing about don't call them jobbers. They're carpenters. They're helping build the next generation. I was often told, you know what? Sometimes the jobbers are the best workers on the crew. They're such great jobbers. All they do is go out there and they make the stars look better. What a load of bullshit. These fucking jobbers are horrible. Like, there's 3 jobbers or so that I've seen in the whole time we've been watching this that I'm like, this fucking guy deserves a lot better. But that's it. These guys are so horrible. Like, they're worse than Man Off the Street. Like, nowadays, they do performance center tryouts, and they call in 50 guys, and they want to find, like, the top 10. This is like, they took 100 guys off the street, and they look for the bottom 10. Oh, man, you're in way too good a shape.
Yeah.
You've only got 3 chins. You're out of here.
And you know why? Because that makes the stars look better.
You're right about that. But it's not like they made the stars look like better workers. The stars are fucking learning to work, fucking trying to carry these idiots.
Yes. The last spot I wanted to bring up, because it was so great. they had established, I think it was before the broken nose, but everyone in the world knew that Pat O'Brien was the worst wrestler out there. And they throw him into the corner to tag out. And he tags to his partner, and I've closed my notes. It doesn't matter what his name is. He comes in, I believe it was Manny. Manny hits a headbutt.
It was Randy Barber.
Manny Fernandez headbutts Randy Barber. Randy Barber takes a bump, rolls back to his corner, and tags Pat O'Brien back in. It was as if they were saying, we're not done with him yet. Go tag him back in.
I have respect for any man with two hands. Any man with two fists has a fighting chance.
Bullshit.
Any man that gets in that ring has my respect. But let's not fool ourselves. These men were horrible, horrible professional wrestlers. And that's the show.
That was a great show.